to accelerate gender equality. During the session, South Africa reaffirmed the enduring importance of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action as a global framework for advancing women's rights and achieving substantive equality for women and for girls. Victims of gender-based violence in South Africa have been urged to speak out early about abuse and report their perpetrators. These were the sentiments of speakers at the funeral of the Eastern Cape Province woman and her 7-year-old son who were hacked to death allegedly by her boyfriend. GBV is recognized as a national crisis in South Africa, with studies revealing that the country has some of the highest rates of violence against women and girls globally. It is reported that the 40-year-old Nyame Kanyusa's partner took her life after reporting the murder to the police. The victim's family says they tried to intervene in the abusive relationship numerous times. And lastly, Iran has vowed to completely close the Strait of Hormuz if the United States acts on threats by the President Donald Trump to target its power plants. It also said the energy and oil facilities would immediately be considered illegitimate targets. On Saturday, Trump threatened to obliterate Iran's power plants if Tehran didn't reopen the strait in 48 hours. The BBC show in Wood reports.
Iran's chokehold on the Strait of Hormuz is one of the most effective weapons in this asymmetric war. Usually around a fifth of the world's oil passes through the narrow gap. That has all but stopped. President Trump seems to be hoping that threatening Iran's power plants will force it open. But Tehran has given little indication that it will give in to threats. Instead, it continues to respond with missiles.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Mamelodi Sundowns made to work hard for a semi-final place in the CAF Champions League, while Bryson December wins the Live Golf South Africa event. I'll tell you more at 6:30.
SABC News. The African Perspective. From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine, every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
6 o'clock Central African time. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much indeed for joining us on Rise and Shine right here on Channel Africa, where we bring you the African perspective. And just to invite you to stay connected to Africa and the world with Channel Africa, the international voice of the South African Broadcasting Corporation. Watch or listen anytime, anywhere at channelafrica.co.za. And you can also get us on our mobile app, that's SABC Plus. Just go into your app store, look for SABC Plus, and you'll find us there as well. And also the audio bouquets on DSTV and OpenView. You'll be able to catch Channel Africa there as well. And don't forget social media. Just look for Channel Africa on Facebook and at Channel Africa 1 and all the other social media pages. My name is Peter Ndoro. A very good morning to you, Asanda, Beda.
Good morning to you, Mr. Peter Ndoro. Welcome back. Happy Monday. All those things.
Yes, I had a fabulous last few days. I saw one of the 7 wonders of the world, the Victoria Falls. And we should stop calling them that, actually, because Musi'oatunya is the proper name by the locals, which means the smoke that thunders.
Musi'oatunya. I think that's easy enough for all of us to be able to pronounce.
This Victoria Falls nonsense.
Absolutely, I agree with you there. So my name is Asanda, Beda, and thank you so much for joining us on this Monday. It is the 23rd of March, and of course we've got a packed show. We are together for the next 3 hours. Lots that we're going to be covering. One of the stories we'll be covering is South Africa's ruling African National Congress political party. The Secretary General all of that, Fikile Mbalula is calling on citizens to come together in defense of the country's democracy. He was speaking at a People's March in Johannesburg this past weekend on Saturday, and this was to pay tribute to the victims of the Sharpeville massacre and marked 30 years since that adoption of South Africa's constitution.
And this week, on Wednesday, we have a huge event that's taking place, the Africa Matters Summit, brought to you by Channel Africa and Wits Business School. And this year's theme for this first summit is taking a look at climate change, refinancing Africa's recovery. We'll be unpacking all the issues around this very, very serious issue. The continent produces the least carbon emissions, but we suffer the most in terms of consequences. And so how do we fix it? We're finding solutions. That's what the Africa Matters Summit is all about, taking place on Wednesday this week in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Franschhoek, get ready. The vibe is happening this March. The Monroe Jazz Festival Franschhoek is bringing more than 30 local and international acts for one unforgettable weekend, including DJ Zinhle, DJ Kent, DJ Kent Zero, Layla Hathaway, Robert Glasper, and Bilal, plus many more. From 27 to 29 March 2026, experience the music, the culture, and the energy. Grab your tickets now at ticketmaster.co.za. Monroe Jazz Festival Franschhoek. Feel the energy. Live the moment.
Africa Update on Channel Africa with Lulu Kabu.
Malawi's President Peter Mutharika has directed that a fresh inquiry be conducted into the plane crash that claimed the life of former Vice President Saulos Clauser, political analyst Ndule Mwakasangula. Ndule, what are they politically and institutional factors that may have influenced President Peter Mutharika's decision to order a fresh inquiry into the crash?
Let me start by saying that the death of the former president and 8 others was a painful national tragedy. You know, public trust is very important. If people feel that the first report left gaps, the president may believe that a fresh inquiry could restore confidence and provide closure. So the decision by the president may be influenced by public pressure, but also the need to rebuild trust in the state institutions.
Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time. Keep Africa in your hands. Connect to our website for all your news, sports, and cultural updates. channelafrica.co.za.
It's 11 minutes past 6 Central African Time, and every day after the 6 o'clock news, we give you our daily Africa Roundup. And this is where we give you a concise update on the key developments shaping the continent and the world over the past 24 hours. And we do this with insights from our team of journalists, analysts, and of course the voices of the newsmakers themselves. And we place the day's biggest stories into context, helping you stay informed, connected, and prepared for the day ahead. Let's begin with this story, where South Africa's major party, the African National Congress's Secretary General, Fikile Mbalula, has called on citizens to come together in defense of the country's democracy. Speaking at a People's March in Johannesburg on Saturday, Mbalula described the event as the start of a wider national effort to foster unity. The march, led by the ANC and its alliance partners, paid tribute to the victims of the Sharpeville massacre, marking 30 years since the adoption of South Africa's constitution.
We are subjected to an aggression by a superpower based on lies that were killing people. You can see now we've got Live Golf at the Stain City. It's packed to capacity. More than 90,000 people, global citizens, are here in Johannesburg. A wonderful country, peaceful country. It doesn't mean where there is crime, just like even in the US, is not being attended to by the state. But this is a general global phenomenon countries are subjected to, bullied, and at the same time undermined, and interference into domestic affairs. We are now told which policies are working for our democracy, which policies are not working for us. But equally, we felt that it is important to raise our voices in defense of South Africa.
From that story, also staying in the country, South Africa, the country is weighing a bill that would hike taxes on gambling winnings as the numbers of adults placing bets climbs and signs of harmful addiction grow. But the bookmaking industry is pushing back, and addiction advocates say one cannot treat addiction through taxation. Zachary Hulman produced this report.
A boom in gambling, and particularly online gambling, is sweeping Africa. The biggest market in the continent is South Africa, where the industry regulator estimates that 2/3 of adults engage in online gambling. That's up from 30% in 2017. Statistics from the National Gambling Board show South Africans wagered a record 1.5 trillion rand, more than $93 billion, in the 2024-25 financial year. And alongside that surge is an alarming rise in gambling addiction. To meet the challenge, governments are hiking taxes on gambling in hopes of disincentivizing gambling and raising revenues. Pretoria has proposed a national 20% tax on online gambling profits. It says the measure would more than double revenues from the sector to $607 million annually.
To East Africa now, where Kenya's President William Ruto and Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni have officially opened an extension of the standard gauge railway linking the two East African nations. The ceremony took place in Kisumu, which is in western Kenya, just days after Ruto launched the construction of the Naivasha-Kisumu section.
Today, here at Kibos in Kisumu, we take yet another decisive and consequential step. We break ground on the 107-kilometer Kisumu-Malaba section of the SGR, completing nearly 1,000 kilometers seamless rail link from Mombasa to Malaba and forming a vital connection to the Malaba-Kampala line.
Zambia's Smart Zambia Institute is seeking an international partner to help develop the country's national digital ID system. The project, part of the Digital Zambia Acceleration Project, is in a key implementation phase and aims for completion by 2026, supported by a $100 million World Bank grant. Smart Zambia Institute National Coordinator Percy Chinyama has more.
We are building an ecosystem. So that ecosystem will require that we have an application system, and we've insisted that that application system is built by Zambians. And most importantly, we want it to have open standards so that we are not locked and we are able to maintain and sustain it for sustainability's sake. So we're going to go through a number of phases. The first one will be the actual procurement of the supplier who will build this ecosystem, so that when you have the ID eventually, it is something that you can use in other facets of your life that require that you are identified. We will need to get to a point that everyone that has a bank account is identified. And most importantly, one of the functional strengths that come with the digital ID is that just having a digital ID can make you automatically be banked.
And that's how we come to the end of today's Africa Roundup. We'll have more for you tomorrow after the 6 o'clock news. Stay with us. Coming up shortly, our regular check-in with mighty Jamie. Asanda will be talking to him about the week that was.
60 years of Channel Africa. Your trusted voice. Your African perspective. Into the future. The sound of Africa is evolving. Experience our new mobile app. Free to download. Free to Connect.
So let's get into the segment of the show that we call the Roundup Wrap. This comes on Mondays here on Rise and Shine. And we're joined by Mighty Jamie, our resident analyst, to talk to us about some of the stories highlighted earlier, as well as a throw forward to the new day and what one can expect to develop in the space of news. And I guess it also sets the tone for the rest of the week, since it is the first day of the week, Monday. Mighty, thank you so much for joining us. As always, great to have you. Good morning.
Morning.
Hello,
To
Mighty.
you. Morning to the viewers. Morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, we can hear you. Let's go straight into it, starting with Iran. Iran has delivered a serious warning to the United States. They're threatening to target critical infrastructure across the Middle East if President Donald Trump follows through with his pledge to obliterate, in inverted commas, Iran's power plant. So this threat comes as we know there are rising tensions over the Strait of Hormuz, a critical global shipping route. What does President Trump's threat of, as you say, obliterating Iran's power plants tell us about the risk of further escalation in the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, it's quite a significant threat, and it's one that we do have to be worried about because it seems as if the Americans are frustrated. They were expecting a very fast war. They were expecting that, the elimination of the leadership and some of the military leadership of Iran would basically lead to capitulation and lead to some kind of Arab Spring within Iran. Obviously, that has not happened. And one of the responses that Iran had was that they actually expanded the nexus of the war by attacking American allies in the region and any countries which had American bases in the region. And as you can see now, you've got the UAE, you've got Saudi Arabia, you've got Bahrain, and a few other, regional, nexus countries also involved in the conflict as things stand right now. So what it seems as if in the additional strategy that they used is that they blocked the Strait of Hormuz for oil supplies for many of the countries and that they viewed to be opponents of Iran. So now what Trump has seemed to do is to say, well, if you're going to do that and adversely affect us, and I think the price of oil has significantly increased. I haven't checked it today, but it's probably still very high. We've seen also in the South African context how the US dollar has strengthened in this period of time because people, they get rid of, risky currencies at that time. So what Trump has done is that he has now said, look, if you're not going to open the Strait of Hormuz, then what I'm going to do is to cut off your energy infrastructure. What's interesting about the response from Iran is that they've said, well, okay, if you do that, we do have a response on the ready. And one of the things that they've pointed out is that they're going to cut desalination plants and they're going to attack the desalination plants in the Middle East. What that means effectively, Asanda, is that they are going to cut off the water supply because the desalination is the process wherein the salty water from the ocean is changed into normal drinkable water because salt water is not fit for human consumption. It actually makes you sick and you can actually die from the consumption thereof. So what they're saying is that we are going to attack that infrastructure around the region. So Israel has desalination plants. We know that all the other, Arab nations in the Gulf have desalination plants. And what this could do is if he were to do that if Iran were to do that, then that would escalate the war much further than it is right now. It has already created a lot of, magnetism in that it has pulled various actors into the war who did not want to be involved in the war. But when Iran responded in the manner that it did, and by blocking the Strait of Hormuz and also by attacking all of these other, regional allies of America, so to speak, other countries with interest in those countries, such as the United Kingdom, you've seen, and a few others have now actually been pulled into the orbit of this particular war. So people are speaking now of the gravity of this particular war and the people who are being pulled, the entities that are being pulled into the war. So this is not a trivial threat, But if it were to happen on the American side, what would definitely do is prolong the war and prolong the impact of the war. Because, for instance, if the energy infrastructure is obliterated in Iran, that will take Iran multiple years to fix. And if the desalination and IT and energy infrastructure is, obliterated in the Middle East more broadly, that will also take, years to fix from the side of the Gulf allies of the US. So if this were to happen and we were to lose line of sight IT access into those parts of the world, that obviously will slow down oil supply, and it will actually lead to the oil price going up. So everything that has been said and done is quite serious up until this point. It looks as if it will continue to remain serious if Donald Trump executes the threat. Hopefully, there's what do they call it, behind the scenes negotiation, back end negotiation, even as there is all of this posturing on the front end, because the world cannot really afford this war of choice to escalate much further.
Absolutely not. And talking of threats, let's move to the West African Civil Society Network, AES. They're calling for simultaneous mobilization to condemn a European Union resolution demanding the release of Niger's former president, Mohamed Bazoum. So he has been detained since the 2023 coup. And this was at a meeting in Niamey that they're calling for this mobilization on Saturday. NGOs are accusing France of pressuring Brussels, and they're criticizing international partners for failing to stabilize the region. And they've also asked for demonstrations, or simultaneous demonstrations are set to take place in Niger, in Burkina Faso and Mali on Tuesday, urging citizens to essentially say no to the EU. So what does this mean then, these coordinated protests, in terms of how Africa, or West Africa, has regional opposition to international pressure when it comes to Niger?
Yes, so this is an interesting story. And I think the first thing that's worth pointing out is that this resolution is not coming in the form of, a directive or a regulation. It's a resolution of the European Parliament, and these are generally non-binding. What they are is they are soft law tools and strategies. So they are more symbolic than they are, concrete in the consequences that flow from those particular resolutions. So obviously a political position has been taken by the EU Parliament, and it does seem to be influenced by France. It's very important to understand that France was benefiting from Niger for a long time, because the French company Orano, which was formerly called Arriva, was actually getting uranium from the region. But when the junta orchestrated the coup, they actually withdrew the company's license. And it has been interesting because in Niger, there have been a variety of coups and there has been instability in the country for a long time. But the French have always enjoyed preferential access. This loss of access, which has happened now, is something that's indicative of them now seeking and feeling the harm there, because as we know, France relies on nuclear energy and provides nuclear power to other nations in Europe. So it does seem as if they're feeling the pinch, and it does seem as if they're influencing other people within the region to take a position against the leadership of Niger currently. And as we know, the Alliance of Sahel States has taken a very strong position against France, and they've criticized France for failing to help them fight insurgency and terrorism in the region, and they've leaned heavily on Russia in the last few years. So this is all interconnected, and we will continue to see the pushback on the ground from the leadership of the Alliance of Sahel States.
Okay, to Sudan now. In East Darfur, there was an attack on a hospital there. At least 64 people have been killed and 89 others injured, according to the World Health Organization, who has also condemned, of course, this attack, but also saying that enough blood has been spilled in Sudan. We know the humanitarian situation there is worsening almost every week. We talk about that. Sudanese rights group Emergency Lawyers have said that the hospital was hit by an army drone strike. Why does Sudan's nearly 3-year conflict seem to have faded from the attention of the international community?
Well, it's regrettable that Sudan's conflict has faded from the international community. It truly is, because it should not have faded. It is the most damaging and long-standing war right now in Africa, which has had as high, if not higher, a death toll than the war in Ukraine and other conflicts that are actually unfolding right now. What has happened in Sudan has displaced over 1 million people internally. We've seen reports of about 20,000 or more people being killed, considering the fact that there was also a genocide in Sudan, which implicates one of the leaders who's actually involved in this war. You'd expect that global attention would remain focused on this war. Sudan is a large supplier of gold. That gold does end up in the Middle East, in the main, and China as well. And so there are multiple interests that ought to make people focus on this. But unfortunately, because Black lives are concerned, it does not seem as if the loss of Black lives is as concerning. And obviously, it's being crowded out by other conflicts which are unfolding right now. We're dealing with the conflict between the USA and Iran. We're dealing with the conflict between the Israel and Gaza. We're dealing with the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Those three seem to always get the preferential focus, so to speak. But it's not as if this conflict is insignificant, and it's something that is regrettable that it hasn't received the attention that it needs.
All right, over to Haiti now. Chad is deploying 800 police officers there to join a UN-backed mission tackling rising gang violence. Gang violence is one that is an escalating issue in Haiti. It's not the first time Africa is intervening. Kenya had sent their own operation there back in 2024. This is called the Gang Suppression Force. So what impact could Chad's deployment have on Haiti's escalating gang violence and the overall security situation there?
This story is an interesting story in that they definitely are trying everything and every strategy to deal with the issues in Haiti, except for doing the obvious things that are necessary. Because what you need is countries such as the United States of America and France, which have long ties to this country, to actually get in there and fix the problem. I don't anticipate that this additional deployment is going to make a difference. Gangs are dominating and running Haiti right now, and the Kenyan force, has not really helped much, except to protect very few neighborhoods where the elites live in Haiti. So this, I don't think, is going to make much of a difference. What is necessary is that the US and France actually get involved. So Chad needs those 800 police officers, to be quite honest. They're facing very serious problems internally. And even Kenya, they need to go back and fix Kenya. This is not the type of thing that anybody thinks is viable. It was only chosen to avoid the optics of these other countries not dealing with the Haiti problem.
Right, we're going to leave it there for this Monday. Mighty, always great catching up with you. We'll do this again on next week, Monday.
Hopefully see you soon.
Great. Thanks for your time again. That's our resident analyst, Mighty Jamie. He joins us on Mondays here on Rise and Shine for our Roundup Wrap. 6:30 Central African time it is now. Let's get our news headlines. Here's Onele Ntsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Kenyans who are enlisted to fight for Russia in the war against Ukraine will be granted amnesty on their return home. Under Kenya's law, it is illegal for the country's citizens to be conscripted into foreign armies, an offence that can carry up to 10 years in prison. South Africa's Minister of Minerals and Petroleum Resources, Gwede Mantashe, will be back at Tekapa Minerals Mine in Kimberley in the Northern Cape province today, following the recovery of 3 of the 5 bodies that were trapped after a mud rush incident last month. And Iran has vowed to completely close the Strait of Hormuz if the United States acts on threats by President Donald Trump to target its power plant. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Ntsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
It's time to find out what's been happening in the world of sport. And after a weekend, there's always lots of news. I was watching the Carabao Cup final and Man City beating Arsenal. What a result. Very good morning to you, Musibudi Makura, with the details.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter. A very good morning indeed from the sports desk. So Mamelodi Sundowns held their nerve under immense pressure in Bamako, Mali last night to secure a place in the Total Energies CAF Champions League semi-finals despite suffering a 2-0 defeat to Stade Malien in the second leg. Now the South African side advanced 3-2 on aggregate after their commanding first leg victory, withstanding a fierce challenge from the Malian side in a dramatic encounter. It also marks the fourth consecutive semi-final appearance for Sundowns, underlining their growing consistency among Africa's elite clubs, even as they were pushed to the limit away from home. Meanwhile, Moroccan club Bagan FC struck deep into stoppage time to seal a dramatic 1-0 victory over Al Hilal of South Sudan on Sunday, and also book a place in the semi-finals of the CAF Champions League. With the tie finally balanced at 1-1 from the first leg, the Moroccan side delivered a decisive blow in the 93rd minute to claim a 2-1 aggregate victory, ending Al Hilal's campaign in heartbreaking fashion. That result not only sends Bagan FC into the last four, but also guarantees Morocco has a place in the final, as AS FAR Rabat already through to the semi-finals on the same side of the draw. Further field now, Manchester City won the Carabao Cup final as Nico O'Reilly his double clinched a 2-0 victory over Arsenal to end hopes of a quadruple for Arsenal this season. So the fullbacks' goals, both headers, came in a space of 4 second half minutes to leave Arsenal stunned and clinch a record 5th League Cup success for Manchester City boss Pep Guardiola. So Kepa Arrizabalaga selected ahead of Arsenal's first choice goalkeeper, that is David Raya, was at fault for the opener as he allowed Ryan Cherki's right wing cross to squirm through his hands, leaving O'Reilly with an open goal at the far post. Now, Arsenal's first cup final appearance since the 2020 FA Cup triumph went from bad to worse when O'Reilly headed home another cross, this time from Matheus Nunes, to spark more City celebrations. Now, City went into the final having been knocked out of the Champions League by Real Madrid, but that result then delighted Guardiola, who then sprinted down the touchline in celebration after the second goal before lifting the 18th career in his tenure as coach of Manchester City. Golf news now. Bryson DeChambeau secured a second LIV Golf title in as many weeks as he beat Jon Rahm in a playoff to emerge victorious in South Africa. Now, both DeChambeau as well as Rahm finished on 26 under par over 72 holes, but the American then claimed his 5th career LIV Golf title on his first extra hole with a birdie. DeChambeau is now the 3rd player with at least 5 LIV Golf wins, joining Joachim Niemann, who has 7 LIV Golf tournament wins, and then Brooks Koepka, who holds 5, who is now back on the PGA Tour. He went on, of course, DeChambeau to congratulate South Africa for hosting what he calls the best ever LIV Golf tournament.
I was just praying all day, praying to give me the perseverance to move forward and keep looking forward. And I just got to say I love everybody. Thank you for supporting. South Africa was unbelievable. I mean, got to be the best LIV event we've ever had. And
meanwhile, a tearful DeChambeau also revealed afterwards that he had faced challenges on the course and the build-up, of course, to that final, without elaborating any further on what those challenges were.
A lot has happened in my life in the past week. I'm just so grateful for my team, the Crushers, everybody supporting me. It's so funny. Golf is a fickle game, and you work so hard at it your whole entire life, and you realize that golf is just golf, and there's a lot more to life than just golf. And had some things happen in the off season or off time during this week, and I was just praying all day, praying to give me the perseverance to move forward and keep looking forward.
And finally, in tennis news, world number 1 Carlos Alcaraz was knocked out of the Miami Open in the third round after a surprise 6-3, 5-7, 6-4 defeat by Sebastian Korda. Now, the top seed Alcaraz produced a sloppy first set, which gave the American the early initiative, but Korda looked to have blown his chance in the second set. Korda then served for the match at 5-4, but was broken to love by the Spaniard, who went on to win the next 2 games to force a third set. Alcaraz up the ante, but Korda held his nerve and seized a break at 4-3 in the third when his opponent struck a forehand wide. Korda then ranked, who's 36 in the world, by the way, that's where he's ranked in the world rankings, confidently held his next 2 service games to close out the match, sealing the win on his second match point as Alcaraz overhit a return. Meanwhile, the third seed Elena Rybakina cruised into the last 16 of the women's singles event with a 6-4, 6-3 victory over Ukraine's Marta Kusiak. The Russian-born Kazakhstani will now play Australian qualifier Tyler Gibson, who knocked out another seeded player with a 6-2, 6-2 win over 18 seed Iva Jovic. That concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, do send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Coming up on Rise and Shine, we go to United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who has issued a stark warning calling for an urgent end to the escalating conflict involving the United States and Israel. Guterres was speaking at the European Union Summit in Brussels. We'll find out more about that story.
Darubini ya Afrika na I am Henry Shakif.
Inaelezwa kwamba serikali kule visiwani Zanzibar imetangaza mpango mkubwa wa kuweza kurejesha urithi unaoungwa mkono na uwekezaji wa sekta ya umma na binafsi yenye thamani ya dola milioni 12. Unadhani sasa Zanzibar imeamua kujipambanua yenyewe kama yenyewe?
Hizi ni habari njema kwanza katika kuongeza uwekezaji kwenye sekta ya utalii, ngoni mwa sekta mama kwa serikali ya mapinduzi ya Zanzibar.
Pengine unawaambia nini wa Tanzania walioko nje ya Tanzania na walioko ndani kuweza kuzitizama fursa hizi kwa jicho la pili na kuweza kuwekeza ndani?
Jambo hili lina mtazamo mpana. Cha kwanza ni aina ya maisha ambayo baadhi ya watu visiwani Zanzibar wamekuwa nayo, na hii ni kutokana na ile colonial legacy, ile kutawaliwa na wenzetu wametawaliwa na masultani.
Darubini ya Afrika kila Jumatatu hadi Ijumaa kuanzia saa 11 kamili hadi saa 12 kamili jioni majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine, weekdays 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Well, let's make your morning better now by updating you on what's happening in the world of business. We say good morning for the first time on this Monday to Buntle Headbush for that.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda. Good morning and a very good morning to our listeners. And our top business story this morning, Egypt's Petroleum Ministry says it will settle $1.3 billion in arrears to international oil companies by June, accelerating its previous timetable for repayments. Egypt had accumulated about $6.1 billion in arrears to foreign oil companies by the 30th of June 2024 due to a prolonged foreign currency shortage that delayed payments and weighed on investment and gas output. The shortage has since eased, although some companies have said that arrears have been once again accumulating. The Southern African Development Community Secretariat is convening a series of meetings on technical barriers to trade in Johannesburg, South Africa from today. The meetings bring together member states and seek to address challenges related to standards, quality assurance, accreditation, and measurement systems, all aimed at improving trade across the region. These structures were established under the SADC Protocol on Trade to help remove barriers that make it difficult for countries to trade with one another. A key focus of the discussions is to support the implementation of the SADC Free Trade Area, launched in 2008, which promotes regional economic integration by reducing tariffs and limiting non-tariff barriers on goods. South Africa's Public Servants Association has slammed the Northwest Province's Education Department for downplaying a massive, almost $6 million ghost employee payroll scandal as an isolated incident. Auditor General findings point to alleged deep systemic failures and negligence in department's financial controls. The union is demanding full accountability and wants both the head of department and CFO to step down immediately. Ngaba Bartman is PSA Northwest Labour Relations Officer.
The department must act urgently because this is not a once-off mistake. It is a systematic failure. What is needed is a full forensic audit to the payroll, especially since over 100 million was paid to people who had resigned, some retired, and even passed away. They must clean and verify all records.
South Africa's Western Cape High Court is expected to hear an appeal by various environmental conservation organizations today who are challenging government's environmental authorization decision that was granted to an international energy company for oil and gas exploration in the deep Western Orange Basin off South Africa's west coast. The applicants argue that the approval process was fatally flawed, irrational, and inconsistent with the Constitution, the National Environmental Management Act, NEMA, and South Africa's climate and energy commitments. The applicants have approached the High Court to review and set aside government's decision to grant the environmental authorization. The head of the International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol, has said the US and Israeli war with Iran has led to an oil crisis in the Middle East that's worse than the two oil shocks of the 1970s and the impact of the Russia-Ukraine war put together. The BBC's Suranjana Tewari has the details.
He's currently consulting with governments around the globe if it is necessary to release more stocks of oil and that the global economy is facing a major threat today. Given that this is the situation, this is what the world's main energy agency is saying, there are many challenges still ahead. When you talk about unlocking supply, that takes time. It doesn't happen within a day.
And now taking our first look at the indicators this morning. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,355 naira. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 49. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shillings 60. And in Zambia, it's 19 kwacha 54. Moving to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 31. Russia, 83 rubles 11. India, it's 93 rupees 48. China, 6 yuan 89. And the South African rand is trading at 17 rand to the dollar this morning. It's gone down quite a bit from last week. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $4,344 per ounce, almost $300 down from last Friday, and platinum at $1,827 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $109.60 a barrel. And that's the business news. I'll be back with another update in the next hour. For any business news stories you'd like to share with us, please do send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Buntle Headbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. The rhythm of Africa. The pulse of the continent. This is Channel Africa. The African perspective. Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has issued a stark warning calling for an urgent end to the escalating conflict involving the United States and Israel. Speaking alongside European Council President Antonio Costa at the European Union Summit in Brussels, Guterres cautioned that the war in the Middle East risks spiraling out of control, with devastating consequences for civilians and the global economy. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe found this report.
As the war enters 21 days with no end in sight, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has made a call for an urgent de-escalation, warning that the intensifying conflict between the United States, Israel and Iran risks spiraling into a crisis with global consequences. His appeal comes at a time when the Middle East is witnessing one of its most volatile military confrontations in recent years, marked by sustained airstrikes, retaliatory missile attacks, and growing fears of a wider regional war. Speaking on the margins of the European Union summit in Brussels on Thursday, Guterres urged an immediate end to the conflict, citing its severe humanitarian impact and far-reaching economic consequences for developing countries.
Let me start by two clear messages. First, to the United States and to Israel. It's high time to end this war that is risking to get completely out of control, causing immense suffering on civilians and with propagation around the global economy that is really dramatic, with potential tragic consequences, especially for the least developed countries.
Guterres also urged Iran to halt its attacks on its neighbors, highlighting the growing threat of wider regional escalation and severe economic fallout, particularly for the world's most vulnerable nations, while calling for the rule of law to be upheld and for diplomacy to take precedence.
Second message to Iran: stop attacking your neighbors. They were never parties to the conflict. The Security Council has condemned these attacks, has ordered them to stop, as it has ordered to open the Strait of Hormuz. The prolonged closure of the Strait of Hormuz causes enormous pain in so many peoples around the world that have nothing to do with this conflict. It's time for the force of the law to prevail over the law of the force. It's time for diplomacy to prevail over war.
European Council President Antonio Costa praised Antonio Guterres for his leadership during the ongoing crisis, reaffirming the European Union's strong support for multilateralism and the United Nations. Speaking alongside Guterres, Costa emphasized the importance of upholding the international rule-based order, describing the UN as a cornerstone of global stability in these turbulent times.
It's a great pleasure to welcome the Secretary General of the United Nations. The United Nations is a key institution in the international order. And now, in these very troubled moments that we are living, more than ever, it's decisive to uphold the international rules-based order, to support multilateralism and to support United Nations action. I would like to commend especially the determination of the Secretary General Antonio Guterres to lead the United Nations in such difficult moment.
In addition, Costa warned that without a strong international rules-based order, global instability from Ukraine to the Middle East and Africa will deepen, while reaffirming the EU's unwavering support for United Nations and the leadership of Antonio Guterres.
A lot of international actors are challenging the international order. But what we are experiencing is that, in fact, there is no alternative for the international rules-based order. Because the alternative is chaos. Alternative is the war in Ukraine. The alternative is the war in Middle East. The alternative is a humanitarian dramatic situation in Gaza. The alternative is wars in several countries in Africa. Then we need to uphold for the international rules-based order, to support the multilateral system and to support especially the United Nations. And I want to ensure to the Secretary General that the European Union will continue to be the great supporter of your work and the work of the United Nations.
Meanwhile, European Parliament President Roberta Metsola stated that the European Union will continue to advocate for de-escalation in the Middle East conflict that has a direct impact for Middle East and Europe.
We will continue to ask for de-escalation. What we saw this morning happening over the last hours has a direct impact on the region, but also on Europe, not only in terms of security, but also in terms of rising prices that we see on energy sources that we are dependent on. So that is what we will continue to insist on, and we hope that a resolution is found.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
6:52 Central Africa time. I'm going to take you back in history now. 1991. Yeah, it was a dark day for Sierra Leone because it saw the beginning of civil war. The Revolutionary United Front, the RUF, led by Fode Sanko and supported by Charles Taylor. Do you remember him? NFPFL in Liberia crossed the border from Liberia to attack villages in Kailuhan district, and this marked the beginning of an 11-year civil war that was characterized by extreme brutality, the use of child soldiers, and of course the blood diamond trade. The conflict would eventually result in tens of thousands of deaths and the displacement of over 2 million people. And it all began today on the 23rd of March 1991. Coming up shortly, President Ramaphosa on Human Rights Day.
Franschhoek, get ready. The vibe is happening this March. The Monroe Jazz Festival Franschhoek is bringing more than 30 local and international acts for one unforgettable weekend, including DJ Zinke, DJ Kent, DJ Kent Zero, Layla Hathaway, Robert Glasper, and Bilal, plus many more. From 27 to 29 March 2026, experience the music, the culture, and the energy. Grab your tickets now at ticketmaster.co.za. Monroe Jazz Festival Franschhoek. Feel the energy. Live the moment.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Corruption and administrative challenges have hindered efforts to improve the lives of ordinary South Africans, President Cyril Ramaphosa said on Human Rights Day in Kimberley, the Northern Cape province. He stressed that measures such as affirmative action, employment equity targets and land reform remain essential to giving full effect to the Constitution. Karabo Siyoko filed this report.
The Constitution, including the Bill of Rights, is 3 decades old this year. But some feel this Constitution lauded worldwide is yet to make a mark on their lives. South African Human Rights Commission Chairperson, Reverend Chris Nissen, elaborates on some of the pressing issues.
Ordinary South Africans, ordinary working class individuals, and those who were previously disadvantaged and are still currently disadvantaged. And one thing, it is common amongst them all of us, most of them feel that they are yet to fully enjoy the benefits of a constitutional democracy. Across, access to sanitation, as well as sufficient and clean water, is the crisis level around our country.
Government acknowledged the gaps between the Constitution and its impact on the lives of citizens. President Cyril Ramaphosa says it established policies and laws needed to continue to better the lives of South Africans.
When the economy is more inclusive, when its benefits are more equitably shared, there is true social justice. Now, addressing the gap between constitutional promise and the lived reality of our people is central to the legitimacy and vitality of our Constitution. Now, as I've said, government cannot do it alone. We need to deepen partnerships between all key stakeholders in our country.
He also called on citizens to be more proactive.
Constitutional democracy and the respect and advancement of our basic human rights depends on active and informed citizens. The Constitution's future will depend not only on state institutions, but on our collective commitment to uphold its values. 30 years ago, South Africans chose one law for one nation. That choice positioned the Constitution as the cornerstone of our democratic order. The task that we all have in the next 30 years is to deepen our own ownership of that constitution, a constitution that decrees that there must be transformation through restoration, through redress and restitution. Our task is to ensure that the rights and freedoms that are in our constitution are not only protected in law, but experienced in the daily lives of our people.
Earlier on Saturday, Ramaphosa handed over 3 facilities that have been updated at the Retlameleng Special Needs School in Khalishiwe. It includes a library, a science lab, and a multi-purpose combi court. The school for the visually and hearing impaired learners, including those with autism, achieved 100% matric pass rate in 2025. President Ramaphosa has promised to mobilize the private sector to help the school achieve its dream of building a hostel. I am Karabo Siyoko in Kimberley.
Right, I have to tell you that I was in Zimbabwe this past weekend, last couple of days of last week. And if you've never traveled to see Mosi Oatunya, or as it's known by many as Victoria Falls, do yourself a favor. It is just round the corner. I was not ecstatic when I saw the number of visitors there, and they were mostly European and from other nations around the world. I didn't see that many Africans from across the continent visiting Victoria Falls. And I'm not sure why that is, but I'm hoping that we recognize the treasures that we have on our continent and that we visit them. The pyramids in Egypt, Timbuktu, the pyramids in Sudan, Victoria Falls, Table Mountain in Cape Town in South Africa. We have so many treasures across the continent, and we just are not visiting them. But Victoria Falls, you will have a spiritual moment just standing next to these falls and watching these gallons and gallons and gallons of water pouring on the sign. So that's what I was up to, and I hope that one day you will get on a plane and go and visit Victoria Falls. Talking about Zimbabwe, and I'm always going on about great engineering. The ancient city of Great Zimbabwe is famous for its massive stone structures built without mortar. Engineers and builders designed walls that have stood for centuries, demonstrating advanced architectural knowledge and engineering skills, and that was all pre the colonial era. So we were engineers. We were amazing people before the Westerners came, and we need to remember that and own it. You're listening to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda. It's 7 o'clock, and we begin the second hour with the news as we say good morning once again to Onele Nsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Well, thank you, Peter. Kenyans enlisted to fight for Russia in the war against Ukraine will be granted amnesty on their return home. The East African Nations Minister Musalia Mudavadi made the announcement following his recent visit to Moscow to tackle the issue, and where it was agreed that no more Kenyans would be recruited. Under Kenya's laws, it is illegal for the country's citizens to be conscripted into foreign armies, an offence that can carry up to 10 years in prison. The Foreign Ministry estimates that 252 Kenyans have been illegally conscripted to fight on the front line, a trend that began about 6 months ago and has also involved recruits from other African countries. South Africa's Minister of Mineral and Petroleum Resources, Gwede Mantashe, will be back at Ekapa Minerals Mine in Kimberley in the Northern Cape Province today, following the recovery of 3 of the 5 bodies that were trapped after a mud rush incident last month. Mine rescue teams brought to the surface 2 bodies yesterday, a week after finding the first body. 2 more bodies remain trapped in the mine. South Africa's Gauteng Province Organised Crime Unit Detective Sergeant Fanning Nkosi is expected to conclude his testimony before the Madlanga Commission this morning. Last week, Nkosi testified about his links with members of the alleged criminal cartel taxi tycoons and relations with some top officials in the city of Tshwane. The commission is investigating allegations of criminal infiltration and political interference in the criminal justice system. Sbahle Mota reports.
Sergeant Nkosi has also testified about his involvement in the murder investigation of hip-hop artist Keenan aka Forbes and his friend Tibelo Tibbs Motswane. Sergeant Nkosi testified to the commission that he was involved with the investigation in the early stages. He told the commission that Motswane was the nephew of taxi tycoon and businessman Mthakathi Mswazi. Mthakathi Mswazi, who was introduced to the commission as a family representative of the late taxi boss Mswazi Msibi, is allegedly linked to members of the criminal underworld.
South Africa has renewed its commitment to advancing gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls through strong multilateral cooperation. That's after it concluded its participation at the 70th session of the Commission on the Status of Women. The Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities spokesperson Kasia Silala explains.
During the CSW 70, South Africa was appointed to serve in the CSW Communication Working Group, a significant milestone that reinforces the country's growing leadership in advancing gender equality. As an interim chair of the South African Development Community, South Africa presented a resolution on women, the girl child, and HIV and AIDS on behalf of the 16 member states for adoption.
Lastly, Iran has vowed to completely close the Strait of Hormuz if the United States acts on threats by President Donald Trump to target its power plants. It also said that energy and oil facilities would immediately be considered legitimate targets. On Saturday, Trump threatened to obliterate Iran's power plant if Tehran didn't reopen straits within 48 hours. The BBC's Joe Inwood reports.
Iran's chokehold on the Strait of Hormuz is one of its most effective weapons in this asymmetric war. Usually, around a fifth of the world's oil passes through the narrow gap. That has all but stopped. President Trump seems to be hoping that threatening Iran's power plants will force it open. But Tehran has given little indication that it will give in to threats. Instead, it continues to respond with missiles.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Mamelodi Sundowns qualify for the semi-finals of the CAF Champions League despite a loss in their second leg quarter-final match, while Bryson DeChambeau wins Live Golf in South Africa. Details coming up at 7:30.
Wherever the hour finds you, across the world, here's your morning African lens on the world's leading story. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
As we enter the second hour of Rise and Shine, we say good morning to you and thank you for joining us or staying with us. If you started off at 6 a.m. when we started, we are going to have another 2 hours of coverage of news and current affairs happening in and around our continent. So stay connected to Africa and the world with Channel Africa, the international voice of the South African Broadcasting Corporation. You can watch us anytime, anywhere via channelafrica.co.za on the SABC Plus app, also on the Channel Africa mobile app. And we are on the audio bouquets of OpenView and DSTV channels. You can connect with us on social media. Find us on Facebook. Our page is Channel Africa. And then across the other various social media platforms, our handle is at Channel Africa 1. Channel Africa, first with the African story globally. And that's with me, Asanda, Beda, and Peter Ndoro.
Yes, indeed. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking about Africa Matters, the summit 2026, and that's taking place this Wednesday, the 23rd of March. No, today's the 23rd of March. It's taking place this Wednesday in Johannesburg in South Africa, and we're looking at financing Africa's recovery, climate finance. The continent has been promised so much by the West for things like the just transition, and for some reason these big nations in the world, the biggest polluters in the world I might add, are just not coming to the party. So what can Africa do? How can Africa finance its recovery? Well, one of the summit's panel moderators is Tami Ngubeni, and I'm going to be talking to her a little bit later on about what we can expect at the panel that she'll be moderating, and what she hopes will come out of that conversation. That's a precursor to the Africa Matters Summit taking place on Wednesday here in Johannesburg, South Africa.
And then another story we take a look at in this hour is South Sudan's Akobo County, which is witnessing a worsening humanitarian crisis. There's repeated violence happening there, and it has forced tens of thousands of families to flee. A story that we started on last week, I think Thursday or Friday it was. So we'll be getting the latest there from Save the Children's County Director in South Sudan in terms of what's taking place. Those stories and more coming up on Rise and Shine.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Africa, meet Abedi.
Yeah, that's me.
Abedi is a music lover through and through.
I really love African music.
He's got a taste for all kinds of tunes and spends his days listening to Channel Africa. Guess what? He didn't know.
Okay.
Channel Africa wants to help Abedi and all music lovers everywhere to discover even more incredible music. That is why Channel Africa is calling on all African musicians to submit their music. Musicians, remember to give us all your relevant information. Make your submissions at music@channelafrica.co.za. Submissions are your chance to be heard on radio. But sadly, they do not guarantee that you'll be playlisted. All submissions will be carefully reviewed to see if they meet our station's requirement. Channel Africa, the African perspective. The voice of the continent, now online, with all your sports fixtures, lifestyle, and more.
The United Kingdom and Nigeria have vowed to strengthen bilateral ties between the two nations. British King Charles hosted Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu in an historic state visit. The last Nigerian state visit to Britain was in 1989 under the military ruler Ibrahim Babangida. Kaelihle Kumalo picks up the story for us.
It's pomp and ceremony at Windsor Castle in England as the United Kingdom and Nigeria are resetting bilateral ties, boosting trade, investment, security, reviving strong partnership and deepening cultural links featured high on the agenda. There are almost 300,000 Nigerian-born people living in the UK.
I want to believe that the signings that he'll be doing in the UK already has inbuilt execution or implementation strategy. If that is followed to the letter, beyond the ceremony of signing, putting pen to paper, I think we can use those opportunities well. But again, it comes from the commitment of the leaders. Leadership commitment is key. And President Tinubu can only be called upon to ensure that these things are taken seriously.
Nigeria is Africa's populous nation, and expectations are high that this state visit will yield positive outcomes for the two countries.
If the visit is going to be of good growth and development for the country, it is okay. But if it is not, then I feel like we should face the one that we are currently going through, because it is not easy.
Things are going not really right in the country, but I think
And I also hope that this visit will also bring a good improvement to some issues which are affecting the Nigerian as a whole. And also when he's back, you will also see a way he can address major issues in the country.
The only person who had the final say, they are the people who have given us a dependent, who is King Charles, who called for this visit. I need to see you. Because previously, we see the royal leaders who have went to have a meeting with the King Charles himself. And for Tinubu to have even go to United Kingdom, I believe is for the same issue on ground of this country, that everybody is complaining, and I believe by the time he returns, there's going to be a softening in the government and there's going to be a smile on the faces of Nigeria.
Nigeria has money, we have resources, whether natural resources or human resources. Let's try for once and see how we can use what we have and stop, going from nation to nation, looking for people to. Whoever does that, you don't want to build your own home. You want to go and invite other people to come and be building your home for you.
The British government hopes the visit will reinforce London's role as a global centre for African business. The UK government also advises the monarch on his relations with foreign leaders, using the soft power of the royal family to try boost the country's stagnant economy. Kylie Kumalo, Johannesburg.
A South African mining specialist has attributed the rising sinkholes in Kutsong Township, located in the Gauteng province of the country, to the area being dolomitic, adding that mining in a dolomitic area can be problematic. The township, which is located in the former mining area of Carltonville, a major mining town in South Africa, is also known as one of the world's richest gold-producing areas, has been experiencing sinkholes for several years. Some residents have been relocated, however others are resisting the move. Sisi Sikhalo visited the area and has more on the story.
Civil society organizations voiced that without binding equity provisions, the next pandemic could repeat vaccine apartheid of COVID-19. Negotiations on the pathogen access and benefit sharing annex conclude this month, and what is decided will determine whether the world responds to the next pandemic more fairly than COVID-19. Now there's a call to the EU to stop blocking health equity and to support a strong PABS annex. Country Program Director for the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, Dr. Nombuso Madonsela, elaborates.
So the negotiations currently on the PABS annexure are at a critical juncture, with the final round of negotiations taking place between March 23 to 28 in Geneva, where major EU powers are resisting binding equity provisions. And the PABS annexure will determine whether equity is real or is it just a rhetoric. Failure to reach agreement could force a weakened compromise or delay the pandemic agreement's ratification. What is decided now, in the next 2 days, will shape whether the next global health emergency is handled more fairly than the COVID-19 pandemic. Let us be clear, ladies and gentlemen. A weak agreement is not a compromise, it is a failure. A delayed agreement is not caution, it is a risk to global health.
Strengthening Africa's Health Technologies Advocacy Coalition, SATAC, also added their voice in calling for health equity. Ruth Dube from the organization mentioned that SATAC is committed to ensuring that African countries derive fair and measurable benefits from the global pathogen sharing systems. The organization believes that if Africa is to provide data, it's not just a data provider, but it's also a decision maker.
We can all agree that the COVID-19 pandemic is not the first pandemic, neither is it the last. Therefore, if we are looking forward to changing the future action or the way that we react to pandemics, it has to come in a way that is different. We have to do things differently. We cannot continue repeating the same thing. And after learning so much, local manufacturing innovation is going to push a lot more. SATAC supports the policy frameworks that enable technology transfer, strengthen Africa's capacity to develop and manufacture health technologies.
Non-profit organization Show Me Your Number says it supports the pathogen access and benefit sharing process because it speaks directly to the principles of equity solidarity. Executive Director of the organization, Mfundisi Mabalani, outlines that without equity solidarity, justice in global health, the world is doomed. He adds that what happened during COVID-19 pandemic should not repeat itself.
COVID-19 pandemic exposed deep inequalities in how the world responds to health crises. While pathogens were shared rapidly across borders, the benefits, which are vaccines, diagnostics, and treatments, were not shared equitably. Countries in the global south, including South Africa, were often last in line despite being critical contributors to surveillance, science, and data. The pandemic agreement, which was delivered on the 5th of May, during the occasion of the 4th World Working Group meeting of the G20 that was held in Melrose, was a turning point. We clapped hands, and in the room we had Ms. Malibona Matsuso, former Director General of the Department of Health, was part and continues to be part of the lead negotiators for the pandemic agreement, and by extension, she has to ensure that the advocacy we're driving of ensuring that the PABS is finally adopted to make the pandemic agreement something worth meaningfully beneficial to the global south, especially countries in Africa.
For Channel Africa, I'm Sisi Sekhalo in Johannesburg, South Africa.
We apologize.
To the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Our apologies there for the last story. We played you the wrong sound for the story that we had introduced. We were talking about Kutsong and Kutsong, but actually the story that we gave you, it was about several civil society organizations led by the AIDS Healthcare Foundation gathered in Johannesburg in South Africa to call on the European Union, the EU, to stop blocking health equity ahead of the final negotiations of the World Health Organization Pandemic Treaty. We will bring you that story about Kutsong in South Africa a little bit later on in the program.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week. Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Africa has been shocked to the depth of its soul.
For 60 years, Channel Africa has been the voice that connects the continent, telling our stories and sharing our vision with the world. This year, we mark 6 decades of broadcast excellence.
60 years of stories, sound, and connection.
6 years of African conversations that matter.
This is 60 years of broadcast excellence.
Broadcast excellence. Rooted in Africa's heartbeat and looking boldly into the future. Join Channel Africa as we celebrate 60 years of broadcasting. Still strong, still vibrant, and still giving you the African perspective.
Channel Africa.
Channel Africa, 1060. 6 decades of stories, voices, and vision.
"7:21 Central African Time is your time, and we go to South Sudan now, a country that is once again facing deepening humanitarian crisis, this time in Akobo County in the country's northeast, where escalating violence has forced tens of thousands of people from their homes. Many are fleeing with nothing, and some crossing rivers in makeshift boats, with reports of children being separated from their families and others born during desperate journeys to safety. Humanitarian agencies warn that access is becoming increasingly difficult, raising fears for the safety and survival of the already vulnerable communities. Well, to help us understand the situation on the ground, we're now joined by Chris Nyamandi, who's the Country Director for Save the Children South Sudan. Chris, thanks very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Peter.
So, Chris, I don't know if you can give us a clear sense of what is happening right now in Akobo County. What has triggered this latest wave of violence and displacement?
Yeah, so this situation in South Sudan is really heart-wrenching. What we see in the central northern parts, eastern parts of South Sudan is increased violence between government forces and opposition forces, and that has resulted in widespread violence, desperate situations. Families are running away from their homes with nothing except the clothes that they have at their back. Over 100,000 people have now crossed over into Ethiopia. Save the Children has been working in those locations, and so some of our staff members have also had to flee because we had huge offices providing health and nutritional supplies, as well as other humanitarian support in those locations. But our staff have also have to run away from those towns because of the renewed violence.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds quite a story, a tragedy in many respects. You've described scenes of people fleeing in extremely dangerous conditions, even, we believe, giving birth while in the process of escaping. What are you and your teams witnessing on the ground across this region?
So this is a place where people were already very vulnerable. People were hungry. There had been floods, as well as because of climate shocks, as well as a shortage of food generally. South Sudan has been suffering from economic collapse, very high inflation, and levels of poverty were very high. And therefore, to experience renewed violence, including killings that have happened in locations where civilians are, has really been difficult for communities. Our staff have been together with displaced families. They have seen children sitting next to their dead parents, which is really heart-wrenching, unimaginable situation that a child should be witnessing the death of their parents. They've seen pregnant women giving birth in forests, in canoes, and that's the level of desperation that the communities are facing right now. Our understanding right now is that humanitarian assistance is not yet reaching those communities, including communities and families who have run into the bush to run away from the violence that has happened in towns. And we fear for the safety of the civilians, especially children and women who are caught up in this violence.
So, with insecurity forcing some aid operations to scale back or even suspend, what does this mean in practical terms for children who depend on your support?
Unfortunately, these are communities that were almost entirely dependent on international and national and local humanitarian assistance, including assistance that comes from the United Nations and from other international and national non-governmental organizations. And so when we are not able to access those communities, we fear for the safety and for the survival of children. These are locations where even food was being supplied by the UN and the international community. These are communities where the entire education system was being supported by international organizations, including Save the Children. These are communities where the health sector was really fragile, including a shortage of drugs and a lack of trained health workers and facilities that were damaged. So we really would like to see humanitarian access restored as soon as possible so that we can go back and do the work that we are here to do, which is to support children so that they can survive, so that they can learn, and so that they can thrive in these communities. At the moment, it's not possible because of the violence that is still ongoing and the threats. We know that the government has been working hard to convince international organizations to come back to those towns, but there has to be more on the humanitarian access front for us to have the level of assurances that we need to go back and do our work.
So, numerous challenges. I wonder how Save the Children is managing to reach people still, and what are the biggest obstacles you're facing in that regard?
So Save the Children has got 13 offices across the country, and this location are two of our largest offices. And we are right now working with other international organizations to find solutions to reopen our activities. However, in the face of violence, our staff are not convinced that it will be safe to go back to those towns for us to restart our activities. However, we have no choice but to find solutions and ways to deliver assistance. We know that if we do not deliver assistance, I think it is the understanding of all organizations, including us, that if we do not deliver this assistance, children are going to die. We know that if we don't deliver this assistance, women are going to die during childbirth. And so we have to find a way to restore humanitarian access to those locations.
What are the authorities telling you in terms of enabling this access?
We have seen the authorities giving us assurances that the security situation is going to improve and we can prepare to come back. But we are yet to see on the ground the assurances bearing fruit. So we know that there is a commitment to ensure the aid workers are safe. But again, at the same time, we think that there has to be more for our staff to feel safe to go back to those communities.
Right, so I guess finally, what's your call to the international community and I guess desperate help and assistance required?
Yeah, so firstly, this violence can stop and should stop. And the reality is that these are bigger political issues which international organizations such as ours are not able to resolve. But we call on all parties to this conflict to stop the violence and go back to a negotiated political settlement. The circle of violence has harmed society in South Sudan, and it will continue to do so until somebody is willing to break that circle and go back to dialogue. From the international community, this is coming at a time when the global solidarity is generally reduced in terms of funding, reduced in terms of even the political will to exert pressure. So it's difficult. Save the Children, last year, we lost 40% of our funding and 40% of our staff. And so to have 267,000 people displaced this year, such an increased number of people in need is making it even more difficult for us. So we call upon the international community to continue to send in solidarity to South Sudan in terms of political pressure as well as funding generally, so that we can continue to do our work.
Chris, thank you so much indeed for joining us on the program, and we wish you the assistance and help that you can get to do the work that you're doing for the people of South Sudan. Thanks so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much, Peter, and good morning.
That was Chris Nyamandi, who's Save the Children Country Director in South Sudan, sharing his insights on this humanitarian crisis, particularly in Akobo County, and the urgent needs facing displaced children and families. It's 7:30. It's time for your news headlines. Here's Onele Nsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. South Sudan's Akobo County is witnessing a worsening humanitarian crisis. Repeated violence has forced tens of thousands of families to flee, leaving children and communities without food, shelter, or essential services. Kenyans enlisted to fight for Russia in the war against Ukraine will be granted amnesty on their return home. Under Kenya's laws, it is illegal for the country's citizens to be conscripted into foreign armies, an offense that can carry up to 10 years in prison. And Jewish settlers held protests in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. This is a day after an 18-year-old was killed in what they say was a deliberate car ramming. It came after settlers attacked Palestinian villages, setting fire to buildings and vehicles. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's catch you up now with what's happening in the world of sports. We say good morning to Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Very good morning indeed from the sports desk. Well, Mamelodi Sundowns held their nerve under intense pressure in Bamako to secure a place in the Total Energies CAF Champions League semi-finals, despite suffering a 2-0 defeat at Stade Malien in the second leg on Sunday. So the South African side advanced 3-2 on aggregate after their commanding first leg victory, withstanding a fierce challenge from the Malian side in a dramatic encounter. It also marks a fourth consecutive semi-final appearance for Sundowns, who are the former champions of this competition, having now underlined their growing consistency among Africa's elite clubs, even as they were pushed to the limit by the home side. Meanwhile, Moroccan side Bakan FC struck deep into stoppage time to seal a dramatic 1-0 victory over Al Hilal of South Sudan on Sunday, and also book a place in the semi-finals of the CAF Champions League. With the tie finally balanced at 1-1 from the first leg, the Moroccan side delivered a decisive blow in the 93rd minute to claim a 2-1 aggregate victory, ending Al Hilal's campaign in the process. So the result not only sees Bagan into the last four, but also guarantees Morocco a place in the final, with FAR Rabat already also through to the semi-finals, but they are not on the same side of the draw. Well, onto this now. Manchester City won the Carabao Cup as Nico O'Reilly's double clinched a 2-0 victory over Arsenal to end hopes of a quadruple this season. Now, the fullback's goals, both headers, came in a space of 4 second half minutes to leave Arsenal stunned and clinch a record fifth League Cup success for Manchester City boss Pep Guardiola. Now, Kepa Arrizabalaga selected ahead of Arsenal's first choice goalkeeper David Raya was at fault for the opener as he allowed Ryan Cherki's right wing cross to squirm through his hands, leaving O'Reilly with an open goal at the far post. Arsenal's first cup final appearance since 2020 in the FA Cup final went from bad to worse when O'Reilly headed home another cross, this time from Mateus Nunes, to spark more City celebrations. Let's hear from the winning manager, Pep Guardiola.
Especially it was special because we had a tough 2 weeks, and especially against opponent. So it's the strongest one. What I've done in the Champions League is so difficult, and the way, especially the second half. In the first as well, the first 15 minutes they suffocate us. We could not breathe. And after that, when we won some second balls and we start, to play, and especially Jeremy in the second half and Ryan. So I'm really pleased because I know against the opponent we face, Mikel create
We'll stay with football news in England. Nottingham Forest, meanwhile, ramped up Tottenham Hotspur's relegation fears with a thumping 3-0 win in North London last night. Now, pre-match optimism at Spurs, fueled by a draw at Liverpool and a spirited Champions League showing against Atletico Madrid, quickly turned to despair. Now, fans who had lined the high road to welcome the team bus left early in frustration, while those who stayed booed the side off at full time. Now, Spurs are now winless in 13 Premier League matches, with just 2 victories in their last 22 matches, leaving their survival prospects looking increasingly bleak. Golf news now. Bryson DeChambeau secured a second Live Golf title in as many weeks as he beat John Rahm of Spain in a playoff to emerge victorious in South Africa. Now, both DeChambeau as well as Rahm finished on 26 under par 72 holes, but the American claimed his 5th career Live title on the extra first hole with a birdie. DeChambeau is the 3rd player to win at least 5 Live Golf tournaments, joining Joaquim Lehmann, who currently has 7, as well as Brooks Koepka, who has 5, who's now back on the PGA Tour. He went on to congratulate South Africa for hosting what he calls the best Live Golf tournament in history.
I was just praying all day, praying to give me the perseverance to move forward and keep looking forward. And I just got to say I love everybody. Thank you for supporting. South Africa was unbelievable. I mean, got to be the best Live event we've ever had.
And finally, in cricket news, Rwanda claimed a thrilling 1-run victory over South Africa's under-19 women's side in a rain-affected encounter at the Patricia Karambani Cup in Lagos on Sunday. So Clarissa Utunwasi top scored for Rwanda with a 26 of 21 balls, while Fanny Otimasiende added 24 to help her side to post 107 for 7 in 14 overs. South Africa then fell very short in the run chase despite a fighting 34 from the captain Mickey van Voorst. The SA under-19 women's side will be back in action on Tuesday when they face off with Zimbabwe's under-19 women's side at the TBS Cricket Oval, also in Lagos. It's 7:38 a.m. Central African Time. That concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, do send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
So, when do you think the first brewery in the world came into being? When did we start drinking beer, do you think? Well, archaeologists have discovered what may be the world's oldest large-scale brewery in Egypt. Yeah, and that's dating back more than 5,000 years. The brewery could produce thousands of liters of beer at a time, showing that large-scale food and drink production was already well developed in ancient African societies. So 5,000 years ago, beer was flowing, man. It was flowing. Stay with us. The business news is coming up.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Peter. Good morning. Our top business story this hour. Egypt's Petroleum Ministry says it will settle $1.3 billion in arrears to international oil companies by June, accelerating its previous timetable for repayments. Egypt had accumulated about $6.1 billion in arrears to foreign oil companies by the 30th of June 2024 due to a prolonged foreign currency shortage that delayed payments and weighed on investment and gas output. The shortage has since eased, although some companies have said that arrears have once again been accumulating. South Africa's Public Servants Association has slammed the Northwest Province's Education Department for downplaying a massive almost $6 million ghost employee payroll scandal as an isolated incident. Auditor General findings point to alleged deep systemic failures and negligence in the department's financial controls. The union is demanding full accountability and wants both the head of department and CFO to step down immediately. Naba Batman is PSA Northwest Labour Relations Officer.
The department must act urgently because this is not a once-off mistake. It is a systematic failure. What is needed is a full forensic audit to the payroll, especially since over 100 million was paid to people who had resigned, some retired, and even passed away. They must clean and verify all records.
South Africa's Gauteng Province Health Department says it's taking steps to recover $270.5 million in outstanding patient fees. It says a significant portion of over $141 million is owed by self-paying patients, including foreign nationals. The department has appointed debt collectors and is targeting traceable debt categories. Siabonga Jikwana is the Chief Director of Health Economics and Finance at the Gauteng Health Department.
We've appointed 5 debt collectors. These are the debt collectors that have been appointed by National Treasury. Our job is to ensure that we can try by all means to recover as much as we could. We started with them 5 months back. And what we have seen during this period is they have managed to collect more than 20 million thus far, which is a great deal of improvement in terms of revenue collection from us.
South Africa's Western Cape High Court is expected to hear an appeal by various environmental conservation organizations today who are challenging government's environmental authorization decision that was granted to an international energy company for oil and gas exploration in the deep Western Orange Basin off South Africa's west coast. The applicants argue that the approval process was fatally flawed, irrational and inconsistent with the Constitution, the National Environmental Management Act, NEMA, and South Africa's climate and energy commitments. The applicants have approached the High Court to review and set aside government's decision to grant the environmental authorization. The head of the International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol, has said the U.S. and Israeli war with Iran has led to an oil crisis in the Middle East that's worse than the 2 oil shocks of the 1970s and the impact of the Russia-Ukraine war put together. The BBC's Suranjana Tawari has the details.
He's currently consulting with governments around the globe if it is necessary to release more stocks of oil and that the global economy is facing a major threat today. Given that this is the situation, this is what the world's main energy agency is saying, there are many challenges still ahead. When you talk about unlocking supply, that takes time. It doesn't happen within a day.
And now taking a look at the indicators. $1 US in Nigeria is trading at 1,355 naira this morning. In Botswana, it's 13 Bula 49. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 60. And in Zambia, it's 19 Kwacha 54. The BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 Real 31. Russia, 83 rubles 11. In India, it's 93 rupees 48. China, 6 yuan 89. And South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand this morning. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $4,344 per ounce, platinum $1,827 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $109.60 a barrel. And that's the business news. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please do send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Give us a call on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Buntle Headbush.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam. Rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
A South African mining specialist has attributed the rising sinkholes in Kutsong Township, located in the Gauteng province of the country, to the area being dolomitic. The township, which is located in the former mining area of Carltonville, a major mining town in South Africa, is also known as one of the world's richest gold-producing areas and has been experiencing sinkholes for several years. Some residents have been relocated, however others are resisting the move. Sisi Sekgalo visited the area and has more on this story.
Fear has gripped the community of Kutzon Township, located in the Merafo local municipality in the Gauteng province of South Africa. Sinkholes continue to emerge in various parts of the township. Some people have had to relocate, leaving their homes which they paid for over many years through the bank. Matsidiso Mukoma lives in front of a huge sinkhole, which used to be a home to one of her neighbors. She couldn't help but be emotional on how this issue has affected her.
Because of
I don't know where to start because this issue is painful. It's painful because we've seen people losing their houses. Myself, as Matsidiso Mukoma, I don't have a parent. My mom passed away. My mother and father at the same time. She bought us a house and made it a home. The municipality came and constructed a tar road which was not finished. Now it's raining. We are afraid that our houses will cave in. My mother was poor. She didn't have a farm or money. So what is comforting me is that she left me with a house which the municipality now wants me to move out of. There's a huge confusion among the residents on the real cause of the sinkholes. Others attribute them to damaged pipes underneath. Some say it's as a result of mining.
There was a lot of water flowing. I was there physically. I spoke with my neighbor that the water is flowing, but we can't see where it's going to. Hardly 15 minutes after I left, by the same street, my neighbor's house caved in, and even yourself, you couldn't continue staying there. We realized the problem is the pipes underneath, they are leaking. The same municipality said the pipes were leaking and they need service. I feel that one way or the other, the mining had an impact on this problem because in previous years, we know that this area is problematic. When the mining was active in the area and there was blasting, our houses used to shake and some of the cracks and sinkholes started at the time. Even those holes and sinkholes, when they blasted, the whole township would shake. So I think they too should take responsibility as mining. They should come and help us resolve this issue. But DMRE hasn't come at all. But we think they should come and assist us.
Mining specialist and lead researcher at the Benchmarks Foundation, David van Wyk, has confirmed that the area is dolomitic. He says the first sinkholes appeared in an area near Kutzon in the 1960s. He adds that there's lots of aquifers underneath, and mining companies tend to pump out the water from aquifers, leaving vacuums because they do not want the aquifers to break above their tunnels and drown their workers. He explains in detail how the sinkholes form.
Currently, we are sitting with a situation where many of the shops in that area have been abandoned. The Cook 1, 2, 3, 4 shafts have been, they're under what Sabanya calls care and maintenance. There's also the Blyvoor mine in that area, and some of those shafts are also under care and maintenance, and there's an awful lot of water in Blyvoor. We had a very heavy rain season this year from about October last year right through to the present. When we have climate change now, we cannot predict what the rainfall is going to be. So the underground workings have been filling up with water. The water have become acidic because it's in contact with iron pyrites. It's also in contact with all the metal and so on that is there underground that have been left there by the companies that have abandoned those mines. Now, when the water rises in these tunnels, the acid in the water tends to eat away the dolomite. The dolomite is like chalk. It very easily disintegrates when it comes into touch with water, let alone acidic water, which eats it away much faster. And that then destabilizes the substructure. A lot of these mines were board and pillar mines underground. There are vast caverns underground upheld by pillars that were not mined. Those pillars then get eaten away by the acid, and so there's nothing to hold up the roof of the underground workings, and then that collapses and whatever is above ground falls into it.
Both the local municipality in the area and South Africa's Department of Mineral and Petroleum Resources could not be reached for comment. For Channel Africa, I'm Sisi Segalo in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Get in touch with us as Channel Africa. You can find us on Facebook. The page there is Channel Africa. And then also across the various social media platforms, you can find us on Instagram, on TikTok, on LinkedIn, as well as YouTube. And the channel is, or the handle is at Channel Africa 1. We welcome your views and comments about our programming there.
Africa at Play with Neto and ETO Chemane.
Lelintle, talk to us about your relationship with your father, Coach Pitso. What is this one thing that he said to you that is still stuck at the top of your head?
Coach Pitso and our mom, Moira Kakale, have always told us that whatever we do in life, we must do it to the best of our abilities. That, represents our family well. But the big thing is do what you love and do it with all the passion that you have. And I think we see it in both their work. I mean, my mom has done a really good job with placing Coach Pitso in different clubs around the world, and she's negotiated contracts, and she's showing that as a woman you can also do work that is seen, and you can also get respect from men in a male-dominated space. And I think my dad has also shown that you must never underestimate the Black African man.
Lelintle Musimane, a South African communications and digital media professional. Lelintle is also a daughter to a great mentor when it comes to the game of football, Coach Jingles Musimane.
Live every Saturday and Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. Your life, your rhythm, your Africa. Channel Africa. Find it for free on Google Play and the Apple App Store.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has issued a stark warning over the escalating conflict involving the United States, Israel and Iran, cautioning that the situation risks spiraling dangerously out of control. Speaking at a European Union summit in Brussels, Guterres called for an immediate end to hostilities as the war enters its third week with continued airstrikes, retaliatory missile attacks and growing fears of a wider regional conflict. He warned that beyond the devastating humanitarian toll, conflict is already sending shockwaves through the global economy, particularly threatening vulnerable and developing nations, whilst tensions around key strategic routes like the Strait of Hormuz raise further concern about global energy supplies. Channel Africa's Michael Mbewe picks up the story.
As the war enters 21 days with no end in sight, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has made a call for an urgent de-escalation, warning that the intensifying conflict between the United States, Israel and Iran risks spiraling into a crisis with global consequences. His appeal comes at a time when the Middle East is witnessing one of its most volatile military confrontations in recent years, marked by sustained airstrikes, retaliatory missile attacks, and growing fears of a wider regional war. Speaking on the margins of the European Union summit in Brussels on Thursday, Guterres urged an immediate end to the conflict, citing its severe humanitarian impact and far-reaching economic consequences for developing countries.
Let me start by two clear messages. First, to the United States and to Israel. It's high time to end this war that is risking to get completely out of control, causing immense suffering on civilians and with propagation around the global economy that is really dramatic, with potential tragic consequences, especially for the least developed countries.
Guterres also urged Iran to halt its attacks on its neighbors, highlighting the growing threat of wider regional escalation and severe economic fallout, particularly for the world's most vulnerable nations, while calling for the rule of law to be upheld and for diplomacy to take precedence.
Second message to Iran: stop attacking your neighbors. They were never parties to the conflict. The Security Council has condemned these attacks, has ordered them to stop, as it has ordered to open the Strait of Hormuz. The prolonged closure of the Strait of Hormuz causes enormous pain in so many peoples around the world that have nothing to do with this conflict. It's time for the force of the law to prevail over the law of the force. It's time for diplomacy to prevail over war.
European Council President Antonio Costa praised Antonio Guterres for his leadership during the ongoing crisis, reaffirming the European Union's strong support for multilateralism and the United Nations. Speaking alongside Guterres, Costa emphasized the importance of upholding the international rule-based order, describing the UN as a cornerstone of global stability in these turbulent times.
It's a great pleasure to welcome the Secretary General of the United Nations. The United Nations is a key institution in the international order. And now, in these very troubled moments that we are living, more than ever, it's decisive to uphold the international rules-based order, to support multilateralism and to support United Nations action. I would like to commend especially the determination of the Secretary General Antonio Guterres to lead the United Nations in such difficult moment.
In addition, Costa warned that without a strong international rules-based order, global instability from Ukraine to the Middle East and Africa will deepen, while reaffirming the EU's unwavering support for United Nations and the leadership of Antonio Guterres.
A lot of international actors are challenging the international order. But what we are experiencing is that, in fact, there is no alternative for the international rules-based order, because the alternative is chaos. Alternative is the war in Ukraine. The alternative is the war in Middle East. The alternative is a humanitarian dramatic situation in Gaza. The alternative is wars in several countries in Africa. Then we need to uphold for the international rules-based order, to support the multilateral system and to support especially the United Nations. And I want to ensure to the Secretary General that the European Union will continue to be the great supporter of your work and the work of the United Nations.
Meanwhile, European Parliament President Roberta Metsola stated that the European Union will continue to advocate for de-escalation in the Middle East conflict that has a direct impact for Middle East and Europe.
We will continue to ask for de-escalation. What we saw this morning happening over the last hours has a direct impact on the region, but also on Europe, not only in terms of security, but also in terms of rising prices that we see on energy sources that we are dependent on. So that is what we will continue to insist on, and we hope that a resolution is found.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
Right, we now enter the third and final hour of Rise and Shine. Thank you for staying with us as Channel Africa broadcasting live from Johannesburg in South Africa. That's where our studios are. The team of Asanda, Beda and Peter Ndoro say good morning again, and we enter the hour with the news update at 8 o'clock Central African time. In about 20 seconds to go. We say good morning to Onele Nsinsi, and then following her will be Musubudi Makura with your sports headlines.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa. SABC News. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. South Sudan's Akobo County is witnessing a worsening humanitarian crisis. Repeated violence has forced tens of thousands of families to flee, leaving children and communities without food, shelter, or essential services. Save the Children's Country Director in South Sudan, Chris Nyamandi, explains.
What we see in the central northern parts, eastern parts of South Sudan is increased violence between government forces and opposition forces. And that has resulted in widespread violence, desperate situations. Families are running away from their homes with nothing except the clothes that they have at their back. Over 100,000 people have now crossed over into Ethiopia. Save the Children has been working in those locations, but our staff have also have to run away from those towns because of the renewed violence.
Kenyans enlisted to fight for Russia in the war against Ukraine will be granted amnesty on their return home. The East African nation's Foreign Minister Musalia Mudavadi made the announcement following his recent visit to Moscow to tackle the issue, and where it was agreed that no more Kenyans would be recruited. Under Kenya's law, it is illegal for the country's citizens to be conscripted into foreign armies, an offence that can carry up to 10 years in prison. The Foreign Ministry estimates that 252 Kenyans have been illegally conscripted to fight on the front line, a trend that began about 6 months ago and has also involved recruits from other African countries. Mine rescue teams at Ekapa Minerals mine in Kimberley, in the Northern Cape province of South Africa, have retrieved all 5 bodies of the mine workers who were kept underground during a mud rush incident on the 17th of February. The first body was retrieved last week Monday. The other 2 were brought to the surface yesterday morning. The last bodies were taken out in the early hours of this morning. The Minister of Minerals and Petroleum Resources, Gwede Mantashe, will be back at the Ekapa Minerals mine this morning for a third time since the incident. The diamond mine, which has employed over 1,000 miners, has applied for liquidation, leaving the miners jobless and unpaid salaries. South Africa's Gauteng Province Organised Crimes Unit Detective Sergeant Fani Nkosi is expected to conclude his testimony before the Madlanga Commission this morning. Last week, Nkosi testified about his links with members of the alleged criminal cartel, taxi tycoons and relations with some top officials in the city of Tshwane. The commission is investigating allegations of criminal infiltration and political interference in the criminal justice system of the country. Smahle Mota reports.
Sergeant Nkosi has also testified about his involvement in the murder investigation of hip-hop artist Keenan aka Forbes and his friend Tibelo Tibbs Motswane. Sergeant Nkosi testified to the commission that he was involved with the investigation in the early stages. He told the commission that Motswane was the nephew of taxi tycoon and businessman Mthakathi Mswazi. Mthakathi Mswazi, who was introduced to the commission as a family representative of the late taxi boss Mswazi Msibi, is allegedly linked to members of the criminal underworld.
Lastly, Jewish settlers have held protests in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. This is a day after an 18-year-old was killed in what they say was a deliberate car ramming. It came after settlers attacked Palestinian villages, setting fire to buildings and vehicles. The BBC's James Waterhouse reports.
Israeli police say the teenage settler was killed after a Palestinian vehicle collided with his quad bike and that they're trying to work out whether it was deliberate or accidental. Around 200 similar attacks were reported last month, although this one seems to be more serious. Israeli settlements on the occupied West Bank are considered illegal under international law.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +711 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Live Golf will return to the shores of South Africa in 2027, while Oman announced a new coach ahead of the FIFA World Cup. Details at 8:30.
From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine, every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
A very good morning to you and welcome to the third and final hour of Channel Africa's Rise and Shine. And we invite you to stay connected to Africa and the world with Channel Africa, the international voice of the SABC, the South African Broadcasting Corporation. You can watch or listen at any time, anywhere through channelafrica.co.za, and as well as on our mobile app, SABC Plus, or you can listen via the DSTV or OpenView audio bouquets. And you can also catch us on social media, on Facebook at Channel Africa, and the other social media social media platforms at Channel Africa 1. My name is Peter Ndoro. I'm with Asanda, Beda, and don't forget that Channel Africa is first with the African story globally. Good morning, Asanda.
A very good morning, everyone, and thank you for choosing us to wake up with. So one of the stories we're looking at in this hour is we go to Nigeria, where the United States has deployed MQ-9 Reaper drones and around 200 troops to Nigeria in what officials describe as a non-combat intelligence support role. This is aimed at helping to tackle the growing threat of Islamist militancy in the country's north. We'll be speaking to a publisher and editor-in-chief of a publication there in Nigeria.
We'll be talking to a colleague, Tami Ngubeni, who's going to tell us about the Africa Summit, Africa Matters Summit, which is taking place on Wednesday this week in Johannesburg in South Africa. And she'll be sharing with us what the panel that she's moderating is going to be discussing, and that's really around financing Africa's recovery. That's the Africa Matters Summit taking place on Wednesday this week in Johannesburg, the first one hosted by Channel Africa and Wits Business School. But more on that with Tami Ngubeni this hour.
Clear your diaries for the 25th of March, 2026. Channel Africa, in partnership with Wits Business School, invites you to a climate change conversation that goes beyond talk. 3 powerful panel discussions. 1 stage. Big questions, bold answers. If you care about the future and value honest, intelligent discussions, this is your seat at the table. Join us on March 25 for Africa Matters. Climate change, financing Africa's recovery. Only on Channel Africa.
Zilipendwa na Abedi Jean de la Croix.
Historia msikilizaji ya Valentine Day au siku ya wapendanao ilianzia katika nyakati za kale za dola la Roma. Watafiti wengi wa historia wanaamini kuwa siku hii inahusishwa na sherehe za kipagani zilizokuwa zikifanyika kila mwaka katikati ya mwezi Februari. Msikilizaji, sherehe hizo zilijulikana kama Lupercalia na zilifanyika kuadhimisha uzazi, upendo na mwanzo wa majira ya kuchipua.
Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
The United States has deployed MQ-9 Reaper drones and around 200 troops to Nigeria in what officials describe as a non-combat intelligence support role aimed at helping tackle the growing threat of Islamist militancy in the country's north. The move comes amid a resurgence of attacks by armed groups, raising fresh questions about regional security and the evolving role of foreign partners in West Africa's counter-terrorism efforts. To unpack what this means on the ground and for the wider region, we're joined now by Abuja-based security analyst Chidi Omeje, who is also publisher and editor-in-chief of Security Digest. Chidi, thank you for making time to talk to us. Good morning.
Good morning, Asana. How are you today?
Good, thank you very much. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Great. So let's start with the bigger picture then on this story. How significant is this U.S. Deployment of drones and troops for Nigeria's fight against insurgents? And does it signal a somewhat of a shift in strategy?
Let's get it clear this way. I mean, the coming of the Americans are not just to help Nigeria do anything. It is for me, it is a win-win thing for both countries. Don't forget that around 2024, when the junta in the Niger Republic came on board, they effectively, shut down American drone base in the Niger Republic. So America were actually looking for a place to have to anchor their intelligence in the Sahel region, and of course Nigeria, this issue have given them a perfect, opportunity to have this anchor. So it is for them. For me, it's more like a more geopolitics than even to help Nigeria. But then, yes, Nigeria needed their intervention at this level, given the fact that it has become almost intractable for the military here, and of course the government that clearly lacks the political will to deal with the situation. So, if the Americans are coming with their intelligence, would have technology-led intelligence support and everything, then it will help Nigerians. But it's not as if that Americans are such a very good and supportive country that won't just want to come and help Nigeria. They have their own interests to pursue because they'll be looking for a place to anchor their intelligence in the Sahel. So this now gives them a perfect opportunity to have an anchor, and then at the same time, like I said, it's a win-win situation for both countries. So Nigeria, well, let us see how much that particular Reaper drone will help. But for me, it's just more geopolitics, and Americans are happy. Nigerians were waiting to see whether we'll see. We just want to see the value they will add, because for now, we've not seen anything much that they've done for us. Because just last week we saw the back-to-back on our troop positions, and a number of places. So we here in Nigeria, we are still waiting to see how much of impact these American presence with their Reapers, drones, and everything will do to the entire effort. So that's why I see it. So for me, like I said, it's more like geopolitics than coming to help Nigeria. Americans are not really well known for that kind of sacrificial support for any African country, as far as I'm concerned.
What is the argument for how this actually translates into action and a difference on the ground for Nigerian troops or Nigerian forces, the intelligence gathered from these MQ-9 drones, if we look at it practically?
I didn't get the question right, so I'm so sorry. Please help me.
What are the arguments that are being brought forward in terms of how this actually translates into action on the ground for Nigerian forces, the gathering of intelligence from these MQ-9 drones, if we're looking at it from a practical perspective?
Okay, fine. I think it's a very important question, because a lot of Nigerians are actually beginning to wonder if these guys are coming with any magic one, because as far as we are concerned, the intelligence gap we have in the whole fight is the fact that the communities have not actually owned up to this. They've not really shown ownership of the entire counterinsurgency efforts. There have only been these reported cases of local informants snitching on troop positions and troop movements. We have seen even fifth columnists within the troops. So there are a lot of issues, there are a lot of dynamics in the whole counterinsurgency operations, and of course the terrorism happening in the Northeast, especially because, if you listen to the Chief of Defense Staff speaking in Maiduguri just a couple of days ago, he practically and directly told the people of Borno State and Yobe states, these two states are actually epicenters of Boko Haram crisis. He told them that, I want to be clear, I want to make a point, and the point is that the members of the communities in these states have not shown enough ownership of the efforts, and that even some intelligence that they get indicates that they are the ones who snitch on troops positions. They are the most of the captured. Of course, we all know that 98% of this Boko Haram terrorists are from those states. So the thing is, it's very clear that even Americans, I don't know how much the Reaper drones will help in terms of dealing with the issue. We have found out, which means that the communities, the people from those areas, sometimes are actually very complicit. They've not shown, and this probably because of bad governance. The trust deficit between government and the people. So they really don't see government as have really been supportive in their lives. So anybody who comes along, be it Boko Haram or be it ISWAP, that give them anything, they will follow because there's disgrace, there's poverty, there's hunger. Bad governance is at the heart of this. So the debate really is how much effort, how much impact will American presidents and their Reaper drones, show? Because for me, it is in the heart. This is a geological issue mostly, and I don't know what the drones would do. If I have intention to snitch on the troop position, I will do it, no matter any Reaper zone around me. So these are the issues. So government must show faith. They must be transparent. They must show good governance. These are the issues we have talked about. The fact that there are triggers, there are fundamental issues that give rise to this thing, to the sustenance of this crisis, and the government have not had that political will to deal with the challenge, the actual, predisposing factors. So these are the issues.
So let's look beyond Nigeria now then. What does this development mean for security across the wider West African region and also the Sahel region, especially given instability in neighboring countries?
Beautiful. Of course, we all know that, the entire Sahel region is a mess. The geopolitics there is, can be characterized as, tumultuous. It's just epicenter of terrorism, from Burkina Faso to Mali to up to Nigeria Republic and then into Nigeria. And of course we know that these issues have only been porous border. I don't even know where Nigeria stops and Nigeria Republic begins, because these are there's no much marked borderlines. Sometimes you see people from Nigeria Republic walking into Nigeria to light a fire. There's not much difference. So now, as we speak right now, the entire Sahel region, like I mentioned, instability is the word. So it is always easy for them to seep into the country because, of course, Nigeria is the attraction, it's the center of attraction. That's why it's the resources. That's why these terrorists come in to stockpile and everything. So, Americans having a base in Nigeria, like I said, will actually help them to have a foothold in this whole situation. But as for we in Nigeria, we know that unless and except the instability in the Sahel region is effectively dealt with, and this is going to be Nigeria issue alone. This is where ECOWAS needed to sit up, but because they didn't handle the IAS group. I'm talking about some of the Sahel countries that are now under juntas. Talking about Mali, Burkina Faso,
right.
And the other country, Guinea. These are Chad. So these people, the obvious disunity in West Africa is not helping out, so that they don't have that unity of effort, and then Nigeria is at the receiving end.
Chidi, thank you so much. We're going to leave it there for today. Always catching up and getting much needed analysis from you.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, Asanda.
Our pleasure. Chidi Omeje is an Abuja-based security analyst and publisher and editor-in-chief of Security Digest, speaking to us about the implications of the U.S. drone and troop deployment in Nigeria. Remains to be seen if the U.S. is maintaining that this is strictly non-combative role. How realistic that is? Can one gather intelligence and not be directly involved in military involvement? We'll see. And that story will continue to monitor on Rise and Shine and Channel Africa.
Ritmos e cultura. com Jacob Tivani. Hoje vamos celebrar um momento muito especial na música, em particular o universo do jazz moçambicano. Ladies and gentlemen, senhoras e senhores, temos o privilégio de receber um dos maiores nomes do jazz de África, moçambicano e, por que não, o mundo lusófono, Moreira Chunguissa, para falarmos sobre o lançamento da edição especial em vinil do seu icônico álbum The Journey, The Moreira Project, Volume 1.
A música é que me escolheu e não foi eu que escolhi a música. O saxofone é que me escolheu, não fui eu que escolhi o saxofone. Eu sinto-me honrado, sinto-me de alguma maneira satisfeito e, mais importante, sinto-me feliz porque usamos o álbum The Journey como um influenciador, catalisador. Eu sinto-me honrado.
Ritmos e cultura com Jacob Tivani, todos os domingos das 20 às 21 horas.
Clear your diaries for the 25th of March, 2026. Channel Africa, in partnership with Wits Business School, invites you to a climate change conversation that goes beyond talk. 3 powerful panel discussions. 1 stage. Big questions, bold answers. If you care about the future and value honest, intelligent discussions, this is your seat at the table. Join us on March 25 for Africa Matters. Climate change, financing Africa's recovery. Only on Channel Africa. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
So, something very important is happening this week, and we want you to be a part of that conversation. Africa is facing growing climate shocks, from devastating floods to prolonged droughts. The question is how to finance recovery and resilience, and this question is becoming increasingly urgent. Now, this week, a new platform, Africa Matters, will be launched in partnership with Wits Business School in Channel Africa in Johannesburg, bringing together policymakers, financiers, and business leaders to focus on one central issue: how Africa can fund its climate response and economic recovery. Now, one of the key sessions will examine climate financing, where the money will come from and whether current global commitments are going to be enough. Well, to take us through this, we're now joined by Channel Africa Business News anchor presenter and one of the summit facilitators, Tami Ngubeni. Tami, great chatting to you. How are you doing ahead of this summit on Wednesday?
Very good morning to you, Peter. Good morning to all of the Channel Africa listeners. Certainly, waiting in you really, bring forward.
All right, Tammy, we're having a problem with your line, so I'm going to give you back to our producer, and then hopefully we'll get you on a cleaner line. That's colleague Tami Ngubeni speaking to us about this Africa Matters Summit, which is kicking off this year for the first time, the 2026 edition, focusing on climate change and the financing of Africa's recovery. As we were saying just now, we find ourselves in this terrible situation where we are the least in terms of emitters of carbon emissions, and yet we are the most affected in terms of climate change because of the bigger industrialized nations in the world that are producing tons of these emissions. And our continent has seen severe droughts. We've been reporting on flooding and a change in the climate that's really affected everything, our economies, our agriculture. So the West, I'll say the West, the speaking about the bigger global economies, have asked us to join them in decarbonizing. And to do this, there's a concept known as the just transition. And that can only happen with assistance and financing. Well, let's talk to Tami Ngubeni now. She's on the line. Tami, so it kicks off on Wednesday, this summit. It is an important one, isn't it?
It certainly is, Peter. It certainly is. It's also a first for us as Channel Africa to be hosting a summit of this nature. And what an apt and important topic to be focusing on, one that directly impacts not only the future of the continent, but the very current and present reality. And what we're doing is dissecting the solutions to a problem that the whole world, or at least most parts of the world, has acknowledged is a global issue, and one that impacts the African continent quite disproportionately in comparison, to other countries. So what's important for us is to look at the solutions of how we can try and, stop the impact and also reverse the damage that has been done, and to put Africa back on a foothold that will allow the continent to progress.
So you'll be facilitating a discussion on climate financing. How critical is funding to Africa's ability to respond to climate change?
Peter, money doesn't solve everything, but it certainly solves a lot of problems. The impact of climate change can be seen in infrastructure damage. That takes countries back developmentally in leaps and bounds. It really compromises and increases the investment risk. Crops, livestock deaths due to heat waves or excessive droughts. So it is important to have the financing in order to mitigate all of the impacts of climate change, but also to see how can we future-proof the nation and how can we future-proof the continent from the effects of climate change, which we are seeing and which is devastating the entire continent. So we'll have various stakeholders who are going to be there, and we'll look at the solutions and the technologies that are currently available and those that are perhaps in development, and to see how finances can be funneled towards that direction in order to fund ourselves also internally as the continent, and not only rely on quote unquote what some countries look as charity, but in truth, financing climate change as far as the African continent is concerned is not an issue of charity. It's an issue of justice, and it is an issue of compensation, because the continent only contributes apparently about 4% of the impact of global warming, and yet disproportionately we are affected. So it is really about justice. It's not about charity.
So you've got a fascinating panel. What will you be focusing on in particular, and what are you hoping will come out of it?
We're focusing on solutions, Peter. We have financiers, financial institutions involved, and those who are involved in raising developmental funding on the continent. So we'll be looking at the type of instruments and tools that are currently available for climate financing, as well as possible solutions of putting together a funding mix, so to speak, on how we best as a continent can go about doing this internally, instead of waiting for funds that are coming outside of the country, or funds that may be quote-unquote allocated or donated to us. But what are the funding instruments that Africa can use and put together and construct so we may be proactive in the mitigation of the impact of climate change?
All right. And I guess, as you keep on saying, solutions are key. And we hope that this summit, unlike many that we've seen in the past, that the information that comes out of this will somehow get collated and used for steps and action.
And it certainly will. We've got a partnership with Wits Business School, as you know. And at the end of the summit, Wits Business School will be collating the outcomes of the summit, the solutions, as well as the problem statements that are going to be postulated, and come up with a document that will be available for the industry to use as a resource. And our hope is that this document will also be a blueprint or a map that will chart the way forward for the African continent on first how we discern and decipher the problem that the continent is facing, as well as the solutions that are currently in place, possible adjustments that need to be made, and a roadmap for the way ahead for Africa. So that really is the outcome that we are hoping for and that we are focusing on as Channel Africa, as well as our various partners, including the Wits Business School.
Tammy, I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday.
And I look forward to your panel too, Peter. It's going to be quite a momentous occasion, and we invite everybody who is able to come through to come and join us. Oftentimes you'll listen to us on Channel Africa, but now here's an opportunity to engage eyeball to eyeball. So we certainly look forward to that.
Fantastic. That's Tammy Ngubeni, one of our senior colleagues on Channel Africa here, doing business news for us every day on Channel Africa. She's going to be facilitating a conversation around finance at the Channel Africa Africa Matters Summit taking place on Wednesday this week. It's 8:30. It's time for your news headlines. Here's Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. South Sudan's Akobo County is witnessing a worsening humanitarian crisis. Repeated violence has forced tens of thousands of families to flee, leaving children and communities without food, shelter, or essential services. Kenyans enlisted to fight for Russia in the war against Ukraine will be granted amnesty on their return home. Under Kenya's law, it is illegal for the country's citizens to conscript in foreign armies, an offence that can carry up to 10 years in sentencing. And Jewish settlers have held protests in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. This is a day after an 18-year-old was killed in what they say was a deliberate car ramming. This came after settlers attacked Palestinian villages, setting fire to buildings and vehicles. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
It's time to catch you up now with what's happening in the world of sports. We say good morning again to Musibudi Makura for that update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Very good morning indeed from the sports desk. For the final time on Africa Rise and Shine, we'll start our sports bulletin with some golf news. So South Africa's Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Gayton McKenzie, has announced that Steyn City will host yet another Live Golf tournament in South Africa in 2027. So he was speaking on the final day of the inaugural event yesterday, McKenzie confirming alongside Live Golf CEO Scott Neal, as well as the Southern Guards GC General Manager Richard Glover. The tournament will take place in April of next year.
Live Golf is coming back next year. We are coming on the 22nd of April until the 25th of April, right here at Steyn City. Tickets are available from 11 a.m. today.
On to football news now. The Oman Football Association has confirmed the appointment of Morocco Tariq Sekochi as the national team coach, replacing Portuguese veteran Carlos Queiroz. The announcement came shortly after Queiroz' departure by mutual consent, with local reports suggesting regional instability influenced his decision. Now, the Portuguese mentor, who took a charge in July of 2025, oversaw 11 matches, winning 3, drawing 5, and then losing 3, but Oman missed out on the 2026 World Cup and exited then the Arab Cup in the group stages. Now, the Moroccan Sekochi guided Morocco's A team to the Arab Cup title just in December of last year and also won the Olympic bronze medal in Paris, France in 2024. Oman are now preparing for the 2027 Asian Cup in Saudi Arabia. Nottingham Forest, meanwhile, ramped up Tottenham Hotspur's relegation fears with a thumping 3-0 win in North London. Pre-match optimism at Spurs, fueled by a draw at Liverpool and a spirited Champions League showing against Atletico Madrid quickly turned to despair. Now, fans who had lined the high road to welcome the team bus very early left in frustration, while those who stayed booed the side off at full time. Spurs are now winless in 13 Premier League matches, with just 2 victories in their last 22, leaving their survival prospects looking increasingly bleak. On to some tennis news now. In case you missed it, the world number 1 Carlos Alcaraz has been knocked out of the Miami Open in the third round after a surprise 6-3, 5-7, 6-4 defeat by Sebastian Korda. The top seed Alcaraz produced a sloppy first set, which gave the American an early initiative, but Korda looked to have blown his chance in the second set. Korda then served for the match at 5-4, but was broken to love by the Spaniard, who went on to win the next 2 games to force a third set. Alcaraz then upped the ante, but Korda was able to hold his nerve and seized a break for 4-3 in the third set when his opponent stroked a forehand wide. The American, ranked 36th in the world, confidently then held his next 2 service games to close out the match, sealing the win on his second match point as Alcaraz overhit a return. Meanwhile, third seed Elina Rybakina cruised into the last 16 of the women's singles with a 6-3, 6-4 victory over Ukraine's Marta Kuziak. The Russian-born Kazakhstani will now play Australian qualifier Tyler Gibson, who knocked off another seeded player with a 6-2, 6-2 win over 18 seed Iva Jovic. And finally, in some cricket news, Rwanda claimed a thrilling 1-run victory over South Africa's under-19 women's cricket team in a rain-affected encounter at the Patricia Kamrambami Cup in Lagos on Sunday. Now, Clarice Otawese top scored for Rwanda with 26 of 21 balls, with Fanny Oti Masende adding 24 to help they side post 101 for the loss of 7 wickets in 14 overs. South Africa fell short in the run chase despite a fighting 34 from captain Mickey van Worst. The South African under-19 team will look to bounce back when they take on Zimbabwe on Tuesday at the TBS Cricket Oval, also in Lagos. That concludes your sports news on Africa Rise and Shine. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, do remember to send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
So, we all know about cataract surgery. It's become pretty standard, actually, and most people will go through it as they get older. Well, ancient Egyptian physicians were among the first to attempt cataract surgery thousands of years ago. Historical medical texts describe early procedures used to restore vision by treating cloudy lenses in the eye. Now, these early experiments laid the groundwork for modern eye surgery techniques used today. There we go, reinforcing the idea that knowledge and expertise existed on our continent thousands and thousands of years ago. Okay, coming up shortly, the business news. Stay with us.
Across Africa, communities rise with the promise of clean water and clean sanitation. The African Union's 2026 theme calls us to action.
It's about mobilizing real commitments, securing climate-resilient water and sanitation projects, and ensuring that water becomes a driver of sustainable development and prosperity across the continent.
A landmark moment, not only for Africa, but for the global movement for access to safe water for all.
Assuring sustainable water availability for every home, every village, every nation. This is the Africa we want.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Good morning. In our top business story this hour, South Africa's economic reform agenda will take centre stage this week as National Treasury convenes policymakers, researchers and industry leaders for a high-level conference aimed at translating evidence into action. The Southern African Towards Inclusive Economic Development SA Tide Phase 2 closeout conference will be held today and tomorrow in the capital, Pretoria. The conference will also mark the formal launch of SA Tide Phase 3, building on 8 years of research and policy collaboration in South Africa. The scope of Phase 3 will be introduced at the conference. Michael Mbewe reports.
Being held under the theme Evidence in Action, Advancing Inclusive Economic Growth, the gathering will unpack key lessons from the SA Tide Phase 2 program while confronting some of the country's most urgent challenges, from persistently high unemployment and mounting fiscal strain to the complexities of a just energy transition and the need to strengthen state capacity and service delivery. The two-day program is set to feature plenary sessions, policy dialogues, and thematic discussions, bringing together some of South Africa's leading economic voices to shape the next phase of inclusive growth and reform.
Egypt's petroleum ministry says it will settle $1.3 billion in arrears to international oil companies by June, accelerating its previous timetable for repayments. Egypt had accumulated about $6.1 billion in arrears to foreign oil companies by the 30th of June 2024 due to a prolonged foreign currency shortage that delayed payments and weighed on investment and gas output. The shortage has since eased, although some companies have said that arrears have been once again accumulating. South Africa's Public Servants Association has slammed the Northwest Province's Education Department for downplaying a massive, almost $6 million ghost employee payroll scandal as an isolated incident. Auditor General findings point to alleged deep systemic failures and negligence in the department's financial controls. The union is demanding full accountability and wants both the head of department and CFO to step down immediately. Ngaba Batman is PSA Northwest Labour Relations Officer.
The department must act urgently because this is not a once-off mistake. It is not a systematic failure. What is needed is a full forensic audit to the payroll, especially since over 100 million was paid to people who had resigned, some retired, and even passed away. They must clean and verify all records.
South Africa's Gauteng Province Health Department says it's taking steps to recover $270.5 million in outstanding patient fees. It says a significant portion of over $141 million is owed by self-paying patients, including foreign nationals. The department has appointed debt collectors and is targeting traceable debt categories. Siyabonga Jikwana is the Chief Director of Health Economics and Finance at the Gauteng Health Department.
We've appointed 5 debt collectors. These are the debt collectors that have been appointed by National Treasury. Our job is to ensure that we can try by all means to recover as much as we could. We started with them 5 months back. And what we have seen during this period is they have managed to collect more than 20 million thus far, which is a great deal of improvement in terms of revenue collection from us.
The head of the International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol, has said the U.S. and Israeli war with Iran has led to an oil crisis in the Middle East that's worse than the 2 oil shocks of the 1970s and the impact of the Russia-Ukraine war put together. The BBC's Suranjana Tawari has the details.
He's currently consulting with governments around the globe if it is necessary to release more stocks of oil and that the global economy is facing a major threat today. Given that this is the situation, this is what the world's main energy agency is saying, there are many challenges still ahead. When you talk about unlocking supply, that takes time. It doesn't happen within a day.
And now taking a look at the indicators, one US dollar in Nigeria is trading at 1,355 naira this morning, and Botswana is 13 pula 49. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shillings 60, and in Zambia it's 19 kwacha 54. The BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 31. Russia 83 rubles 11. In India it's 93 rupees 48. China 6 yuan 89, and South Africa $1 is trading at 17 rand this morning. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $4,344 per ounce, almost $300 down from Friday afternoon. Platinum at $1,827 per ounce, also lower, while Brent crude oil is at $109.60 a barrel. That's the business news. I'll be back with another update in the next hour. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please do send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Give us a call on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Buntle Hetbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
It was a week of high drama for the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission cases inquiry. This week began with two former presidents, Thabo Mbeki and Jacob Zuma, with the support of President Cyril Ramaphosa, facing off against the chairperson of the Judicial Commission, Justice Sisi Kampepe. A spirited rebuttal of their claims of bias, possible bias, were heard at the South African Gauteng High Court in Johannesburg, with the resumption of public hearings midweek. Very different versions of what had stopped the investigation and prosecution of TRC cases, as heard by senior political reporter Busi Bopela.
Stay tuned to Channel Africa. Stream us on our new and updated website, channelafrica.co.za. 6 decades strong, Channel Africa continues to inspire Africa and the world, proudly sharing
the African perspective.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine, weekdays 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge et Binal Sport depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, Rise and Shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
Corruption and administrative challenges have hindered efforts to improve the lives of ordinary South Africans, President Cyril Ramaphosa said on Human Rights Day in Kimberley, Northern Cape Province. He stressed that measures such as affirmative action, employment equity targets, and land reform remain essential to giving full effect to the Constitution. Karabo Siyoko filed this report.
The Constitution, including the Bill of Rights, is 3 decades old this year. But some feel this constitution lauded worldwide is yet to make a mark on their lives. South African Human Rights Commission Chairperson, Reverend Chris Nissen elaborates on some of the pressing issues.
ordinary South Africans, ordinary working class individuals, and those who were previously disadvantaged and are still currently disadvantaged. And one thing, it is common amongst them all of us, most of them feel that they are yet to fully enjoy the benefits of a constitutional democracy. Across, access to sanitation, as well as sufficient and clean water, is the crisis level around our country.
Government acknowledged the gaps between the Constitution and its impact on the lives of citizens. President Cyril Ramaphosa says it established policies and laws needed to continue to better the lives of South Africans.
When the economy is more inclusive, when its benefits are more equitably shared, there is true social justice. Now, addressing the gap between constitutional promise and the lived reality of our people is central to the legitimacy and vitality of our Constitution. Now, as I've said, government cannot do it alone. We need to deepen partnerships between all key stakeholders in our country.
He also called on citizens to be more proactive.
Constitutional democracy and the respect and advancement of our basic human rights depends on active and informed citizens. The Constitution's future will depend not only on state institutions, but on our collective commitment to uphold its values. 30 years ago, South Africans chose one law for one nation. That choice positioned the Constitution as the cornerstone of our democratic order. The task that we all have in the next 30 years is to deepen our own ownership of that Constitution. A Constitution that decrees that there must be transformation through restoration, through redress and restitution. Our task is to ensure that the rights and freedoms that are in our Constitution are not only protected in law, but experienced in the daily lives of our people.
Earlier on Saturday, Ramaphosa handed over 3 facilities that have been updated at the Retlameleng Special Needs School in Khalishiwe. It includes a library, a science lab, and a multi-purpose combi court. The school for the visually and hearing impaired learners, including those with autism, achieved 100% matric pass rate in 2025. President Ramaphosa has promised to mobilize the private sector to help the school achieve its dream of building a hostel. I am Karabo Siyoko in Kimberley.
Right, after Rise and Shine, we have On the Move, that show hosted by Benjamin Moshatama and Palisa Tau. So let's find out what's happening on this Monday's edition in terms of what we can expect, a snippet thereof. Good morning.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good.
Mr.
This one
Benji?
is going to be relevant for you, Asanda.
Okay.
Because your home state is in the Eastern Cape, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see that story of that Nigerian community that installed a traditional leader?
Yeah,
in the Eastern
East
Cape,
London.
and they said this is their king now.
Yeah.
And that created a lot of questions around the debate of, is this a good thing? How do you install a king in a sovereign state from another country? And it was like, is this a cultural overreach? What was your take on it?
I actually had questions around that. How does it work?
Mm-hmm.
But then on the other hand, I'm thinking, I mean, we know that we live in an Africa that's become one.
Really?
And people,
we are one.
We're going there. But I
Okay.
mean, when people live in certain places for a very long time,
Mm-hmm.
they identify a lot of their culture with that particular place. So I don't think it's necessarily a disrespect to the Xhosa culture, but it's let's add on a Nigerian culture that's already here.
Really? Because I always thought that monarchies were based on territorial and geographic or population dynamic, right?
Mhm.
So if it's in another state, how does it actually work? Because this monarch is not originally from this territory. So
Yeah.
doesn't that idea of king and kingdom work together?
I don't think it will interfere in terms of what the traditional Xhosa leaders are doing in those areas
Okay.
geographically. But maybe it will be like more an advisory role.
That's interesting. Why?
I don't think they would allow for that, for another chief to just take over and say
that's the
we
debate
can
that we're gonna
allocate
have.
certain
Yeah,
land, we can,
Yeah, no, we're getting into it. So we'll be
Yeah.
debating, is this cultural expression or is it cultural overreach?
Yeah, very interesting one. I actually had that question when I saw the story. So that's coming up on after Rise and Shine on Channel Africa. It is On the Move.
Be inspired. Stay informed. Channel Africa, the beauty of life. Now available anytime, anywhere with our new app.
Ituba Holdings is preparing to step down as operator of South Africa's National Lottery at the end of May, bringing to a close over a decade at the helm. During that time, the company says it has raised billions of rands for charitable causes and supported community development across the country. Ituba has also expanded beyond South Africa into countries including Botswana, Tanzania, Uganda and Kenya, reflecting a growing footprint across Africa's lottery sector. To reflect on Ituba's legacy and future plans, we're joined live now by Michelle van Trotzenberg, Ituba Holdings Head of Corporate Relations. Michelle, thank you for making time to talk to us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, and how are you today?
Good, thank you very much, and we appreciate you making time for us. Let's look back to over more than a decade running South Africa's National Lottery. How would you sum up Ituba's journey and its key achievements?
It's been a journey, needless to say the least. Our aim from the start was always to reinvigorate the National Lottery, and I can definitely say that it has been an extraordinary adventure. One of our key drivers was to make sure that the National Lottery is accessible to as many players and participants around the country. So we have terminals in the retail space, over 8,000 terminals that goes from corner to corner in South Africa. We've also got a very, very robust banking partnership with the top banks in South Africa. So over 60% of all of our sales is actually going through your banking partners, such as Capitec, your FNBs, your Absa banks. We actually had a massive winner over the weekend on Powerball. Over 108 million was won on Friday night with the Powerball jackpots, and it was an Absa winner. So it's fantastic. It's been a real good adventure. We've not only created massive winners, we've also been able to contribute significantly towards the good causes in South Africa. And as you mentioned, over billions has been contributed over our tenure to good causes that is distributed by the National Lotteries Commission.
So in terms of social impact then with community projects or initiatives, which ones are you most proud of that you can cite examples of?
So Ituba has their own corporate responsible initiatives. As I indicated, the way we operate, Ituba is the operator of the National Lottery, and we only run the marketing, the operations, the day-to-day activities. Every single week, we do all the contributions towards the National Lotteries Commission. And the National Lotteries Commission is responsible to identify the good causes beneficiaries as well as manage the programs. So Ituba doesn't get involved with that. So, although it's a completely separate entity, we are very proud that the money that we've generated through the sales, they are contributing towards these good causes, but we don't physically get involved. From an Ituba point of view, we run a very, very robust a scholarship program. Every year we identify top scholars and we take them on the journey. We give them the full support, motivation throughout the entire study period. They get accommodation, they get funds to be able to make sure that they don't need to worry about those kind of smaller life to day-to-day challenges. They can focus mainly on their studies. And we've already had a couple of students or several students over the years that have qualified and are now in the workspace.
Well, that covers a lot of, in terms of Ituba's legacy. We know also you've expanded into countries like Botswana, Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya. So there's much more for Ituba beyond South Africa. But also, responsible gambling is a concern. It's an important global one. So how has Ituba promoted safe and responsible play among its customers?
So the National Lottery is very different to the gaming space, and I think there has to be a distinction between the two. If you look at the ticket pricing of a National Lottery ticket, it is as cost effective as R2 for your sports stake games, R3 and R5. So with the National Lottery, you purchase a ticket and it's a ticket of chance. Whereas gambling is slightly different. So gambling, you are in a casino, you can play as much as you want. But what we mainly focus on, which is basically one of our key principles, is protecting the vulnerable, making sure that we don't advertise to children under the age of 18. And also we've got very, very stringent processes in place to prevent underage play, as well as also excessive play. And that's mainly very achievable through your digital platforms, where we can make sure that you have to put in your registered South African ID number in order to qualify to prove that you are over age. And that is one of the key principles that we employ through all of our partners. We do mystery shopping campaigns through the retail space to also ensure that they do not sell tickets to underage. So we don't see National Lottery specifically as a gambling challenge. However, we do have measures in place to prevent excessive play.
Michelle, thank you so much again for joining us on this Monday morning.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Great. That's Michelle van Tronsenberg, who is Ituba Holdings Head of Corporate Relations, reflecting on over a decade of running South Africa's National Lottery. And that's how we come to the end of Rise and Shine on this Monday. I'm Asanda Beda. We hand you over to Benjamin.
And I'm Peter Ndoro. Benjamin and Melissa, have a good show.
Tune in and turn up the volume. This is Channel.
All right, it is 900 hours Central African time. Let's get our latest news. Thanks to Peter and Asanda. Let's start off on the move and get those news updates.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Benjamin. Looking at your top stories, South Sudan's Akoba County witnessing a worsening humanitarian crisis, and Iran blames the U.S. and Israel for a deadly missile attack. Your latest news. Greetings to our listeners. South Sudan's Akoba County is witnessing a worsening humanitarian crisis. Repeated violence has forced tens of thousands of families to flee, leaving children in communities without food, shelter, or essential services. Save the Children's Country Director in South Sudan, Chris Nyamandi, explains.
What we see in the central northern parts, eastern parts of South Sudan is increased violence between government forces and opposition forces, and that has resulted in widespread violence, desperate situations. Families are running away from their homes with nothing except the clothes that they have at their back. Over 100,000 people have now crossed